She saved a dying baby in a blizzard, and her own pack exiled her for it. But that child was no ordinary orphan. What Kaela discovered years later would shake an entire kingdom to its core. Stay until the end to find out what happened, hit that like button, and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. The wind screamed like a living thing. Kaela Thorne crouched low against the ridgeline, her breath crystallizing in the air before her face. The blizzard had turned the northern mountains into a white maze of death, erasing trails, swallowing landmarks, reducing the world to a furious howl of ice and rage. She pulled her fur-lined hood tighter and squinted through the swirling chaos. Somewhere out there, the hunting party was scattered. 5 wolves separated by the storm, each fighting to survive until dawn. She shouldn't have been out here at all. The Frost Ridge Pack didn't send women on winter hunts. Not because they were weak, Kaela had proven herself capable 100 times over, but because the pack's alpha, Garen Blackmaw, believed in the old ways. Women bore children, men brought meat. That was the law of survival in the unforgiving North, and any challenge to it was met with teeth and fury. But this winter was different. The game had vanished. The caribou herds that once thundered through the valley had migrated early, spooked by something the hunters couldn't name. The Chubay caches were nearly empty. Children cried themselves to sleep with hunger gnawing at their bellies, and the elders grew thinner by the day. Desperation had forced Garen to break his own rules. He'd sent every able-bodied shifter into the mountains, male and female alike, with orders to return with food or not return at all. Kaela had volunteered immediately. Now, 6 hours into the hunt, she was beginning to wonder if she'd made a terrible mistake. The storm had come out of nowhere, a wall of white that swallowed the sky and turned the afternoon into twilight. One moment she'd been tracking a lone elk through a pine forest. The next, she couldn't see her own hands. The howls of her pack mates had faded into the wind. She was alone. And in the northern wilderness, alone meant dead. She forced herself to move, one boot crunching into the deep snow after another. Her shifter senses gave her some advantage. Her hearing was sharper than any human's, her night vision better, her body more resistant to the cold. But even shifters could freeze. She needed shelter, fast. The wind shifted, and with it came a sound that didn't belong. Kaela froze. It was faint, nearly lost beneath the roar of the blizzard, but unmistakable. A cry. High-pitched and desperate. Human. No, not human. Infant. Her heart slammed against her ribs. Out here in this storm? Impossible. There were no settlements within 50 miles, no roads, no reason for anyone to be... The cry came again, weaker this time. Kaela didn't think. She ran. Her boots slipped on ice-slicked rocks as she plunged down the slope, following the sound with an urgency that bordered on madness. The rational part of her brain screamed that this was suicide, that she was abandoning her own survival for a phantom in the storm. But the cry pulled at something deeper than reason, something primal and undeniable. She nearly fell into the ravine. Her boot caught on a hidden root at the last second, and she threw herself backward, landing hard in the snow. Her pulse thundered in her ears as she crawled to the edge and peered down into the rocky crevasse below. At first she saw nothing but shadows and ice, then a flash of color, deep crimson against the white. Blood. Kaela's stomach twisted. She shifted her eyes, letting her wolf rise just enough to sharpen her vision, and the scene below snapped into terrible clarity. A woman lay crumpled at the bottom of the ravine, half buried in snow. Her clothes were torn and frozen, her dark hair matted with ice and gore. One arm was bent at an unnatural angle. The other clutched something to her chest, a bundle wrapped in cloth that shimmered even in the dim light. Royal blue, embroidered with silver thread. And from that bundle came the cry. "No," Kaela whispered. "No, no, no." She didn't have rope. Didn't have time. The woman below wasn't moving, hadn't moved since Kaela arrived. She was already gone, frozen or bled out, or both. But the bundle? The baby was still alive. Kaela made a decision in the space of a heartbeat. She shifted. Her bones cracked and reformed, fur rippling across her skin as her body compressed and strengthened into the form of a massive gray wolf. The transformation burned through her clothes, but she didn't care. In wolf form, her claws could grip ice, her body could withstand the fall. She leaped. The descent was controlled chaos. A scramble of claws against rock, powerful legs absorbing the impact as she hit the ravine floor. She shifted back immediately, her human hands reaching for the bundle even as her bare skin screamed in protest against the cold. The woman's fingers were frozen solid around the cloth. "I'm sorry," Kaela breathed, and she pried the dead woman's grip open with shaking hands. The baby tumbled into her arms. It was a girl, tiny, maybe a few weeks old, if that. Her skin was blue-tinged with cold, her lips pale, but her chest rose and fell in shallow, desperate gasps. The cloth around her was exquisite, real silk, embroidered with symbols Kaela didn't recognize. A royal crest, perhaps, or something older. The infant's eyes fluttered open, and Kaela's breath caught. They were gold. Pure, molten gold. Shifter eyes. But not just any shifter. The color was too pure, too vibrant. This child carried alpha blood. Strong alpha blood. The kind that only appeared in the oldest, most powerful bloodlines. The kind that ruled packs and kingdoms. The baby's tiny hand reached up and wrapped around Kaela's finger with surprising strength. And in that moment, everything changed. Kaela didn't hear the wind anymore, didn't feel the cold. All she saw was this fragile, impossible life clinging to her with a grip that said, "Please, please don't leave me. Please don't let me die alone in the dark." She thought of the pack law. No new mouths during famine. Any child not born to the pack was a burden, a drain on resources that could mean the difference between survival and starvation. Garen would never allow it. The council would never allow it. Saving this baby meant exile. Kaela looked down at the golden eyes watching her with such trust, such desperate hope. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay, little one, I've got you." She tore a strip from her own shirt and wrapped it around the baby, then bundled the child against her chest. She shifted again, carefully this time, letting her wolf form cradle the infant in the thick fur of her ruff. The climb back up the ravine was brutal, every muscle screaming, claws slipping on ice, but she didn't stop. Couldn't stop. By the time she reached the top, the storm was beginning to ease. The journey back to Frost Ridge took 4 hours. 4 hours of trudging through waist-deep snow, of shielding the baby from the wind, of stopping every few minutes to breathe warmth onto the child's freezing skin. Kaela's wolf form could endure cold that would kill a human in minutes, but even she had limits. The baby never cried. She just watched Kaela with those impossibly golden eyes, as if she understood that silence meant survival. Dawn was breaking when Kaela finally stumbled into the settlement. Frost Ridge wasn't much, a cluster of cabins built from timber and stone, smoke rising from chimneys, a communal hall at the center. But it was home. Or it had been. The hunters had already returned. Kaela could see them gathered near the hall, bloodied and exhausted, carcasses of deer and mountain goats laid out in the snow. The hunt had been successful then. The pack would eat. But the moment Kaela stepped into the clearing, every conversation stopped. Heads turned, eyes widened. She shifted back to human form, ignoring her nakedness, cradling the now visible baby in her arms. The child stirred, whimpering softly, and Kaela's protective instinct flared so hard it nearly knocked her to her knees. Garen Blackmaw emerged from the crowd. He was a mountain of a man, even in human form, broad-shouldered, scarred, his black hair shot through with silver. His wolf was legendary for its size and ferocity, and his authority was absolute. When he spoke, the pack obeyed. Always. His eyes locked onto the bundle in Kaela's arms, and his expression went cold. "What," he said quietly, "is that?" It wasn't a question. Kaela met his gaze. "A child. I found her in the mountains. Her mother was dead. She would have frozen if I'd left her." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Kaela caught fragments. Not ours. Famine. Another mouth to feed. Fool girl. Garen stepped closer, his massive frame blocking out the rising sun. "You know the law." "I know it." "Then you know what you've done." Kaela's jaw tightened. "I saved a life." "You brought weakness into this pack." Garen's voice was granite. "We are barely surviving as it is. Every scrap of food is measured. Every mouth is counted. And you bring us a stranger's whelp? A burden we cannot afford?" The baby made a small sound, and Kaela's arms tightened protectively. "She's just a baby. She is not ours." The crowd had grown larger now, more faces appearing from cabins, drawn by the commotion. Kaela saw the council members. Elder Maris with her blind white eyes, Torven the huntmaster, Selda the healer. None of them spoke. None of them had to. Their silence was verdict enough. Garen crossed his arms. You will take the child back to where you found her. She'll die. That is not our concern. She's a baby. And we have our own young to feed. Garen's voice cracked like thunder. Our own children are going hungry, Kaela. I will not sacrifice them for a stranger. Kaela's heart pounded. She'd known this was coming, known it from the moment she picked up the child. But hearing the words spoken aloud, seeing the hard set of Garen's jaw, made it real in a way that stole her breath. She looked down at the infant in her arms. The baby had fallen asleep, tiny fingers curled against Kaela's chest, those golden eyes hidden beneath delicate lids. So small, so fragile, so utterly dependent on Kaela's next choice. No, Kaela said. The word fell into the clearing like a stone into still water. Garen's eyes narrowed. What did you say? I said no. Kaela lifted her chin. I won't abandon her. She's under my protection now. A dangerous silence followed. Then Garen's lip curled back, revealing teeth that were too sharp to be entirely human. You dare defy me? I'm not defying you. I'm making a choice. You're making a mistake. Maybe. Kaela's voice didn't waver. But it's mine to make. For a long moment, Garen just stared at her. Kaela could feel the weight of the pack's attention, could hear the rapid breathing of the crowd, could sense the shift in the air as every wolf present tensed for violence. Then Garen spoke, and his words were ice. Frost Ridge does not tolerate disobedience. You know this. You were raised in this pack, trained under our law, protected by our strength. And now you spit on that protection for the sake of a stranger's child. She's not a stranger, Kaela said quietly. Not anymore. Garen's expression didn't change. Then you are. The finality in his voice hit Kaela like a physical blow. You are hereby exiled from Frost Ridge, Garen continued, his words formal now, spoken with the authority of an alpha rendering judgment. You are stripped of pack rights, pack protection, and pack territory. You will leave before nightfall. If you return, you will be killed as a rogue. This is my word, and it is law. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Exile was a death sentence in the north. Without a pack, a shifter had no one to watch their back, no one to hunt with, no shelter when the storms came. Most exiles didn't last a season. Kaela felt the tears burning behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She looked around at the faces she'd known her entire life, pack members she'd hunted with, trained with, laughed with. Some looked away. Others met her gaze with something like pity. Not one of them spoke in her defense. She turned back to Garen. I understand. Do you? His voice was bitter. You've thrown your life away, Kaela. For what? A child that means nothing to you? Kaela looked down at the baby, still sleeping peacefully against her chest, oblivious to the judgment raining down around her. She means everything to me, Kaela said softly, and that's all that matters. Garen's jaw worked, but he said nothing more. He simply turned and walked away, and with him went the warmth of the pack bond, that invisible thread that connected every member of Frost Ridge, the sense of belonging that Kaela had carried her entire life. It snapped like a breaking bone. Kaela gasped, the sudden emptiness hitting her so hard she nearly fell. The pack bond was more than connection. It was identity, safety, home. Losing it felt like losing a limb. But the baby stirred in her arms, making a small, contented sound, and Kaela forced herself to breathe. She had made her choice. Now she had to live with it. 2 hours later, Kaela stood at the edge of Frost Ridge with everything she owned tied to her back. A worn travel pack, a hunting knife, a water skin, and a few strips of dried meat that Elder Maris had slipped into her hand with trembling fingers and tear-filled eyes. Go south, the old woman had whispered. Find the river valley. There's an old trapper's cabin there, abandoned for years, but it might still stand. It's your only chance. Kaela had thanked her and said nothing of the fact that she'd never make it that far. Not with a newborn, not in this cold. She wrapped the baby, Leora, she'd decided to call her, after her own grandmother, in every scrap of fabric she could spare, and started walking. The first day was the hardest. Every step took her farther from the only home she'd ever known. The pack-bond's absence was a constant ache, a phantom pain that made her chest feel hollow. She caught herself turning around more than once, half expecting to see familiar faces following her, ready to say it was all a mistake. Come back, you're forgiven. But the forest behind her remained empty. Leora, miraculously, stayed quiet. She seemed to understand that crying would bring danger, or perhaps she was simply too weak to make much noise. Kaela stopped every hour to nurse her. She'd shifted partially, allowing her wolf's instincts to guide her, and somehow it worked. The baby latched on and drank, her small body gradually warming against Kaela's skin. Night fell like a hammer. The temperature dropped so fast Kaela could feel frost forming on her eyelashes. She found a hollow beneath an overhanging rock and shifted fully into her wolf form, curling her body around Leora to create a living shelter. The baby nestled into her fur, breathing softly, and Kaela forced herself to stay awake, listening to every sound in the darkness. The wilderness was full of predators: bears, mountain cats, rogue shifters who'd lost their humanity. Any one of them would see a lone wolf and a helpless infant as easy prey. But nothing came that first night, or the second. By the third day, Kaela found the cabin. It was half collapsed, the roof caved in on one side, the door hanging from a single hinge. But the stone chimney was intact, and 3 walls still stood firm. It was shelter. It was something. Kaela set Leora down carefully in a nest of pine boughs and got to work. She spent the next week transforming the ruin into something livable. She patched the roof with branches and moss, repaired the door with leather strips and sheer stubbornness, cleared out the debris and animal nests. She hunted small game, rabbits, squirrels, anything she could catch without leaving Leora alone for too long, and smoked the meat over a fire she kept burning day and night. It was brutal, exhausting work. But every time she looked at Leora, watching her with those golden eyes, reaching for Kaela's face with tiny hands, she found the strength to keep going. The baby was growing stronger. Color had returned to her cheeks, and she'd started making small cooing sounds that pierced Kaela's heart with unexpected joy. She was beautiful, perfect, and Kaela would die before she let anything happen to her. On the 10th night, the wolf appeared. Kaela had just finished nursing Leora and was banking the fire for the evening when she heard it, a low, rumbling growl from just beyond the tree line. Every instinct screamed danger. She placed Leora in the makeshift crib she'd built from woven branches and turned toward the door, her body already shifting, claws extending, teeth sharpening. A massive shape moved in the shadows outside. It was huge, bigger than any wolf Kaela had ever seen, bigger even than Garen in his alpha form. Its fur was midnight black, its eyes reflecting the firelight like twin stars. And when it stepped into the clearing, Kaela's heart stopped. This was no ordinary shifter. This was something ancient, something wrong. The wolf's movements were jerky, almost mechanical, like a puppet being yanked by invisible strings. Foam flecked its jaws. Its eyes were wild, unfocused, filled with a madness that made Kaela's skin crawl. A feral. She'd heard stories of shifters who lost themselves to their wolves, who stayed shifted so long they forgot how to be human, forgot language, forgot everything except hunger and rage. Ferals were rare, but they were nightmares made flesh. Unstoppable. Unkillable. And one was standing between her and Leora. Kaela didn't hesitate. She threw herself forward with a snarl, her wolf form erupting in a burst of fur and fury. She was smaller than the feral, weaker, and she knew it, but she was also a mother now, and that made her something more dangerous than any feral could imagine. She was desperate. The 2 wolves collided in an explosion of snapping jaws and raking claws. Kaela went for the throat immediately, but the feral was faster than it looked. It twisted aside and slammed into her with the force of a landslide, sending her sprawling across the frozen ground. She rolled to her feet and lunged again, teeth finding purchase in the feral's shoulder. Blood filled her mouth, hot, coppery, wrong. The feral howled, a sound that split the night and threw her off like she weighed nothing. Kaela hit a tree hard enough to crack ribs. Pain exploded through her chest, stealing her breath, but she forced herself up. The feral was advancing on the cabin now, its head low, hackles raised. It was going for Leora. No! Kaela's roar was barely human. She launched herself at the feral's back, claws digging into thick fur, jaws clamping down on the back of its neck. The feral bucked and twisted, trying to shake her off, but Kaela held on with every ounce of strength she had left. Blood poured from her wounds, slicking her fur, but she didn't let go. For a moment, they were locked in a deadly stalemate. Kaela clinging to the feral's back, the feral thrashing beneath her, the cabin mere feet away with Leora inside, crying now, her infant wails cutting through the chaos. Then something extraordinary happened. The feral went still. Not dead. Not unconscious. Just still. Its massive head turned toward the cabin, toward the sound of Leora's crying, and Kaela felt the change ripple through its body. The wildness in its eyes flickered. For just a heartbeat, she saw something else in those depths. Recognition. Grief. The feral shook once, dislodging Kaela gently, almost carefully, and then it turned and fled into the forest. Kaela collapsed in the snow, her body screaming, her vision tunneling. She forced herself to shift back to human form, dragging her broken body across the clearing and into the cabin. Leora was still crying, her small face red with distress, and Kaela gathered her into her arms despite the agony it caused. "Shh," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Shh, baby, I'm here. You're safe, I promise." Leora quieted gradually, her cries subsiding into hiccups and then silence. She stared up at Kaela with those golden eyes, and Kaela saw a question there. "Why did you save me?" Kaela pressed a kiss to the baby's forehead. "Because you're mine," she whispered, "and I don't abandon what's mine." Outside, in the darkness beyond the firelight, the massive black wolf watched from the shadows. It didn't approach, didn't attack. It just stood there, silent and still, its eyes fixed on the cabin. And when dawn came, it was gone. But Kaela knew, with a certainty that chilled her more than any winter storm, that it would be back. The wolf came back 3 nights later. Kaela was outside gathering firewood when she caught the scent, earth and pine and something darker, something that made her wolf rise with instinctive wariness. She dropped the branches and spun toward the tree line, her eyes already shifting to catch movement in the deepening twilight. There, a shadow among shadows, massive and still. The feral watched her from the edge of the clearing, its black fur blending almost perfectly with the darkness beneath the pines. Those strange, fractured eyes caught the last rays of sunlight and reflected them back like shattered glass. It didn't move, didn't growl, just stood there, a statue carved from nightmare. Kaela's heart hammered against her ribs. Inside the cabin, she could hear Leora making soft baby sounds, not crying, just awake and content. "Vulnerable. Stay back," Kaela said, her voice low and steady despite the fear clawing at her throat. She knew the creature couldn't understand human speech, but the tone might carry meaning. "You're not welcome here." The wolf's ears twitched. That was the only response. For a long moment, they stood in tense silence, woman and beast, predator and protector, locked in a standoff that felt older than the mountains themselves. Then, slowly, deliberately, the feral turned its massive head toward the cabin, toward Leora. Kaela shifted instantly, her body exploding into fur and muscle, a snarl ripping from her throat that promised death to anything that threatened her child. She planted herself between the feral and the door, hackles raised, every tooth bared. The black wolf looked at her, really looked, and in its eyes Kaela saw something that stopped her cold. Not hunger, not madness, longing. Before she could process what that meant, the creature turned and melted back into the forest like smoke. One moment it was there, the next, gone. Kaela held her defensive stance for another 10 heartbeats before shifting back to human form, her naked skin immediately protesting the cold. She grabbed the firewood with shaking hands and hurried inside, barring the door behind her with a heavy beam she'd fashioned from a fallen oak. Leora lay in her makeshift crib, watching the ceiling with those impossibly golden eyes. When she saw Kaela, her tiny face broke into something that wasn't quite a smile but close enough to make Kaela's heart ache. "It's okay," Kaela whispered, scooping the baby up and holding her close. "I won't let anything hurt you. I swear it." But even as she said the words, doubt crept in like frost through cracks. How long could she keep that promise? She was one wolf against a wilderness full of threats. The feral was only the beginning. There were bears in these mountains, mountain lions, other rogue shifters. Not to mention the cold itself, which killed more efficiently than any predator, and winter was just beginning. The days that followed established a brutal routine. Kaela woke before dawn to check her snares and traps, always leaving Liora bundled in the warmest corner of the cabin, always rushing back before the baby could wake and cry. She hunted with desperate efficiency, taking down rabbits and grouse, and once, in a moment of reckless courage, a young deer that she'd tracked for hours through fresh snow. The meat kept them alive, but barely. Kaela's body was burning through calories faster than she could replace them. Nursing Liora, maintaining her own strength, keeping the fire burning day and night, it was an impossible equation. She felt herself growing thinner, harder, her movements becoming more economical as her body learned to do more with less. But Liora thrived. The baby was growing at an astonishing rate, her cheeks filling out, her limbs strengthening. At barely 2 months old, she could already hold her head up, already focus her eyes with unusual intensity. And those eyes, they followed Kaela everywhere, filled with a trust so complete it was terrifying. "You don't know how bad this is, do you?" Kaela murmured one evening, rocking Liora by the fire. "You don't know that we're one broken leg, one bad storm, one empty week away from dying out here." Liora grabbed Kaela's finger with surprising strength and made a cooing sound that might have been agreement or might have been gas. Either way, it made Kaela smile despite everything. The black wolf appeared again a week later. Then 3 days after that. Then every night. It never approached the cabin. Never tried to enter. It just appeared at the edge of the clearing as the sun set, took up a position near the tree line, and watched. Sometimes it would circle the perimeter, moving with that same jerky, unsettling gait. Other times it simply sat, still as stone, its eyes fixed on the cabin like a guardian or a jailer. Kaela couldn't decide which. She tried everything to drive it away. She threw rocks, shouted, charged it in her wolf form, snarling and snapping. The creature simply retreated a few yards and waited for her to exhaust herself before returning to its post. "What do you want?" she screamed at it one night, her frustration boiling over into rage. "Why won't you leave us alone?" The wolf's only answer was that same unblinking stare. But then Kaela started noticing something strange. The snares she set at the far end of her territory, the ones she checked every 3 days, were never empty anymore. There was always something. A rabbit. A grouse. Once, impossibly, a full-grown turkey that should have been miles away in the lowlands. The animals were always freshly killed, their necks broken clean, left carefully positioned as if placed there by hand, or by jaws that knew exactly how to kill without damaging the meat. Kaela crouched beside one of the snares, studying the tracks in the snow. Massive paw prints circled the area, far too large to be anything but the feral. The pattern was clear. The creature had found the snare, killed the rabbit, and left it for her. "You're feeding us," she whispered. The implications made her head spin. Ferals didn't help people. They didn't plan or problem solve. They were pure instinct, pure violence, pure hunger. They certainly didn't leave food for strangers. Unless this one wasn't entirely feral, unless some part of it still remembered how to be more than a beast. That night, Kaela made a decision that went against every survival instinct she possessed. When the black wolf appeared at dusk, taking its usual position near the pines, Kaela walked out to meet it. She shifted just enough to let her wolf show, a sign of respect among shifters, an acknowledgement of equality. Then she knelt in the snow and placed a piece of cooked venison on the ground between them. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for the food, for not attacking us. I don't know if you can understand me, but thank you." The wolf didn't move, didn't even look at the meat. Its eyes were fixed on Kaela's face with an intensity that made her skin prickle. Then, very slowly, it lowered its head in what could only be described as a nod. Kaela's breath caught. That was acknowledgement, recognition. It understood. "What are you?" she breathed. The wolf's ears flattened. Its whole body seemed to sag, as if the question had struck a physical blow. For a moment, Kaela thought it might flee. Instead, it did something that made her blood run cold. It shifted. Not fully. Not into a human, but enough that she could see the wrongness of it. The way its bones started to reshape and then froze, stuck between forms, the way its muzzle elongated and then snapped back with an audible crack of breaking cartilage. The creature made a sound that was half howl, half scream, a noise of such profound agony that Kaela felt tears spring to her eyes. Then it was just a wolf again, panting hard, trembling. You can't shift back, Kaela realized, horror washing through her. You're stuck. The wolf's eyes closed. That was answer enough. Kaela had heard of this, shifters who stayed in wolf form too long, so long that their human halves withered and died, leaving them trapped forever. It was considered a fate worse than death. Most ferals didn't last long in that state. They lost themselves completely within months, becoming nothing but animals. But this one had been trapped for years. Had to have been, to reach this size, this level of whatever this was. And somehow, impossibly, it was still fighting. Still holding on to some fragment of what it used to be. I'm sorry, Kaela whispered. The wolf opened its eyes and looked past her toward the cabin, toward where Leora slept. And Kaela understood. This wasn't random. The creature wasn't here by accident. It was drawn to Leora specifically. It had been drawn to her from the beginning. Do you know her? Kaela asked, her voice barely audible. The baby. Do you know who she is? The wolf's whole body shuddered. It took a step forward, then another, moving with painful slowness. Kaela forced herself to stay still, to not react, even as every instinct screamed at her to run. The creature's massive head lowered until its nose was inches from her face. She could feel its breath, hot and rank, could see the scars that crisscrossed its muzzle. Then it did something impossible. It whined, a high, broken sound that no wolf its size should be able to make. A sound of grief so profound it seemed to tear the night in half. Kaela's hand moved without conscious thought, reaching up to touch the side of the wolf's face. The fur was coarse beneath her fingers, matted in places, but warm, alive. She's safe, Kaela said softly. I promise you, she's safe. I'll protect her with my life. The wolf pressed into her touch for just a moment. Then it pulled back, turned, and disappeared into the darkness. Kaela knelt in the snow for a long time, her mind racing. Everything about this situation was wrong. The royal cloth Leora had been wrapped in, those golden eyes that spoke of alpha bloodlines, a feral wolf that recognized the baby, that brought them food, that grieved. What had happened to Leora's mother? Who was she running from when she died in that ravine? And what connection did this creature have to a child who couldn't be more than a few weeks old? The questions haunted Kaela through the long winter nights that followed. But she had no answers, and survival left little time for mysteries. December descended on the mountains like a clenched fist. The temperatures dropped so low that water froze in seconds, so cold that Kaela's breath turned to ice crystals before it left her mouth. The game grew scarce as animals hid in their dens, and the snows deepened until travel became nearly impossible. Kaela pushed herself harder. She hunted in blizzards that should have killed her, tracking prey through conditions that reduced visibility to arm's length. She fished through holes she carved in frozen streams, her hands going numb as she waited for trout to bite. She set snares in ever-widening circles, checking them obsessively, terrified of missing even a single meal. And every night, the black wolf was there, watching, waiting, leaving food when her own hunts failed. They developed an unspoken understanding. Kaela would leave scraps for the creature, bones with meat still clinging to them, organ meat she couldn't stomach. The wolf would leave fresh kills at her snares. Neither acknowledged the arrangement directly, but it kept them both alive. Leora continued to grow at that impossible rate. By 3 months, she was the size of a 6-month-old. By 4 months, she was trying to crawl, her small body driven by a strength that should have been months away. And her eyes, those golden eyes, watched everything with an awareness that seemed far too knowing for an infant. You're not a normal baby, are you? Kaela murmured one evening, watching Leora grab at the firelight with chubby hands. Whatever your bloodline is, it's something special, something powerful. Leora turned her head and looked directly at Kaela, and for just a moment there was something ancient in that gaze, something that made Kaela's wolf whimper and press low. Then Leora giggled and went back to playing with her own feet, and the moment passed. But Kaela couldn't shake the feeling that she was caring for something far more significant than a lost child. She was protecting a secret, a legacy, something that people would kill for if they knew it existed. The thought terrified her, and then, on a bitter morning in late January, the first visitor came. Kaela was checking her nearest snares when she caught the scent. Wolf. But not the feral. This was different, fresher, closer to human. Her hackles rose instantly. She raced back to the cabin, shifting mid-stride, her paws barely touching the snow as she hurtled through the forest. She burst into the clearing and skidded to a halt. A man stood in front of her cabin door. Young, maybe 25, with the lean build of a hunter and eyes that marked him as a shifter. He'd clearly been about to knock. When he saw Kaela, he froze, his hands coming up in a gesture of peace. "Easy," he said quickly. "I'm not here to fight." Kaela shifted back to human form, not caring about her nakedness or the weapons she didn't have. Her body was weapon enough. "Get away from that door." "I just want to talk. Now." Something in her voice made him step back. Smart. Kaela could feel her wolf surging just beneath her skin, ready to rip this stranger apart if he so much as breathed wrong. "My name is Dane," the man said, his hand still raised. "I'm from the Riverbend Pack, about 30 miles south of here. We've been tracking unusual activity in this territory. Large predator, probably a bear or a rogue shifter. I followed the trail here and—" He paused, his nose wrinkling slightly. "You're alone out here? Not your concern." "Actually, it is. This far north, alone during winter. That's suicide. If you need help, Riverbend can—" "I don't need help." Kaela's voice could have cut glass. "And I don't need visitors. Leave." Dane's eyes narrowed. "I can hear a baby crying." Ice flooded Kaela's veins. Inside the cabin, Leora had woken up and was making her presence known with increasingly insistent wails. The sound cut through the morning air like a knife. "That's none of your business," Kaela said flatly. "A baby?" Dane took a step forward, concern clear on his face. "Out here? Are you insane? Do you have any idea how dangerous—" "I said, leave." Kaela let her claws extend, let her eyes shift fully to Wolf. "This is your last warning." Dane stared at her for a long moment. She could see him processing the situation, the ramshackle cabin, the smoke from a fire that clearly burned day and night, the scent of desperation that must be rolling off her in waves. She could see the moment he decided she was crazy. "Fine," he said slowly, "but if you change your mind, Riverbend is 2 days south, following the river. We take in refugees, even unusual ones. I'm not a refugee, I'm not anything. Now go." Dane backed away slowly, his eyes never leaving hers. When he reached the tree line, he shifted, a sleek brown wolf, smaller than Kaela but built for speed, and vanished into the forest. Kaela stood there for another minute, every sense straining for signs of his return. When she was certain he was truly gone, she rushed inside to Leora. The baby was red-faced and furious, her small fists waving. The moment Kaela picked her up, she quieted, nuzzling against Kaela's chest with the single-minded determination of the very young. "Shh, it's okay. Mama's here." The word slipped out before Kaela could stop it. Mama. She'd been avoiding that word, trying to maintain some emotional distance, some reminder that this child wasn't truly hers. But the pretense was gone. Had been gone for weeks, if she was honest. Leora was hers, in every way that mattered, and that meant she couldn't let anyone find them. That night, the black wolf didn't appear at its usual time. Kaela waited by the window, watching the tree line, anxiety building with every passing minute. The creature had been so consistent, so reliable. Its absence felt wrong. Then, just after midnight, it burst into the clearing at a full run. Kaela was outside in seconds, shifting as she moved. The feral skidded to a halt, its sides heaving, foam flecking its jaws. It turned in a tight circle, agitated, then fixed its eyes on Kaela and growled, not threatening, but urgent, insistent. "What?" Kaela demanded. "What's wrong?" The wolf jerked its head toward the south, toward where Dane had disappeared. Then it did something it had never done before. It barked. Once, loud and sharp. A warning. Kaela's blood went cold. More of them? His pack? The The wolf barked again, then lowered itself into a crouch. Every muscle tensed. Kaela understood. They were coming. Riverbend wasn't just going to let this go. They'd heard a baby crying in the wilderness, seen a lone wolf protecting it desperately, and they were coming back with numbers. To help, they'd say. To rescue the child from the crazy woman who'd dragged an infant into the frozen mountains. They'd take Leora away. No, Kaela breathed. No, no, no. The wolf whined, that same broken sound of grief. Then it stood and moved closer to the cabin, taking up a defensive position between the door and the southern approach. It was choosing a side. Kaela stared at the creature, this impossible, tragic thing that should have killed them both weeks ago, but instead had kept them alive. She saw the intelligence in its eyes, saw the determination, saw the same desperate protectiveness that burned in her own chest. "You won't let them take her either," she said quietly. The wolf's ears pricked forward. An agreement. Kaela made a decision that would have made her pack, her old pack, the one that had exiled her, call her suicidal. She walked forward, closed the distance between herself and the feral, and pressed her forehead against its massive skull. "Then we fight together," she whispered. "Whatever comes, we protect her. Both of us." The wolf shuddered. For just a moment, Kaela felt something pass between them. Not a pack bond, nothing so clean or complete, but a recognition, a shared purpose. They were both outcasts, both broken, both willing to die for the tiny golden-eyed child sleeping inside that ramshackle cabin. The wolf pulled back and met her eyes. Then it tilted its head toward the forest and took off running. Kaela watched it go, her mind already racing. The Riverbend wolves would come at dawn. That was standard protocol for a rescue operation. They'd come in numbers, expecting to overwhelm a single desperate female and take the baby into protective custody. They had no idea what they were walking into. Kaela spent the remaining hours of darkness preparing. She sharpened her hunting knife until the edge could split hairs. She gathered every weapon she could improvise. Sharpened stakes, rocks heavy enough to crush bone, a club fashioned from a tree branch. She packed a bag with supplies, dried meat, water skin, extra cloth for Leora, and hid it in the forest 50 yards from the cabin. If they had to run, she'd be ready. As the sky began to lighten, Kaela fed Leora and then did something she'd been avoiding. She took the royal cloth the baby had been wrapped in, that beautiful silk with its embroidered symbols, and studied it closely. The crest was unlike anything she recognized from the local packs. It was older, more formal, a crown above a crescent moon surrounded by what looked like stars or perhaps wolves running in a circle. This wasn't just alpha marking. This was royalty. "Who are you?" Kaela whispered, looking down at Leora. "What kind of blood runs in your veins?" Leora just grabbed at the cloth and giggled. The sound was cut short by howls in the distance. Multiple voices calling in the coordinated pattern of a pack on the move. They were here. Kaela wrapped Leora against her chest in a makeshift sling and stepped outside. The sun was just breaking over the mountains, painting the snow gold and pink. Beautiful. Deceptive. The world looked peaceful right up until the moment it tried to kill you. 5 wolves emerged from the forest. Dane was among them, along with 4 others. 2 males, 2 females, all in their prime, all moving with the easy confidence of shifters who'd never known real hunger or desperation. They stopped at the edge of the clearing when they saw Kaela. Dane shifted first, the others following suit. They stood there naked and unashamed, the way shifters did, their bodies marked with the well-fed health of a strong pack. "We don't want trouble," Dane called out. "We're just here to help." "I don't need help," Kaela repeated. A woman stepped forward, older than the others. Her hair shot through with silver. "My name is Kira. I'm the head enforcer for Riverbend. We heard there's a child out here in dangerous conditions. We're offering sanctuary. The baby is fine. She's an infant in the middle of winter, 30 miles from the nearest settlement." Kira's voice was calm but firm. "That's not fine. That's negligence at best, abuse at worst." Kaela's hands tightened on Leora. "She's mine. You have no right. We have every right." One of the males spoke up, aggression clear in his stance. "Pack law says we protect cubs. All cubs. Even ones being raised by exiles who don't know when to quit." The word exile hit like a slap. So they knew. Or had guessed. I was exiled because I wouldn't abandon her, Kaela said quietly, and I'm not going to start now. Kira sighed. No one's asking you to abandon her. Come with us. Both of you. Riverbend will accept you, feed you, keep you safe through the winter. When spring comes, if you still want to leave, you can go, but give that child a chance to survive. It was reasonable, generous even. Everything Kaela had been too proud or too stubborn to ask for. It was also impossible, because if Leora went to Riverbend, if she was seen by a full pack, someone would recognize what she was. Those golden eyes, that royal cloth, that impossible growth rate. Someone would ask questions. Someone would connect the dots. And whoever had killed Leora's mother would find out the baby survived. No, Kaela said. Kira's expression hardened. I was hoping you'd be reasonable. And I was hoping you'd respect the word no. That baby's safety isn't negotiable. On that, Kaela said softly, we agree. She shifted, letting her wolf explode outward, Leora secure in the sling that shifted with her. The baby made a surprise sound but didn't cry. She'd done this before, knew what it meant. The Riverbend wolves shifted immediately, forming a loose circle. 5 against 1. Impossible odds. Then the black wolf emerged from the tree line behind them. The creature was even more massive than Kaela remembered, its shoulders coming up to a full-grown man's chest. Its eyes reflected the morning light like fragments of broken amber, and when it growled, the sound resonated in bones and marrow. The Riverbend wolves spun, their confidence evaporating in an instant. This was what they'd been tracking, the large predator. They'd thought it was a bear. They'd been very, very wrong. Back away, Kira said, her voice tight. Slowly. Don't make any sudden... The feral moved like lightning, closing the distance between itself and the nearest Riverbend wolf in a heartbeat. It didn't attack, just placed itself between the pack and Kaela, a living wall of fur and muscle, and barely contained violence. The message was clear. Touch the woman, or the baby, and die. Dane stared at Kaela, his eyes wide. What the hell is that thing? My problem, Kaela said. Not yours. It'll kill you. It's had plenty of chances. Now leave. All of you. And don't come back. For a long moment, no one moved. The standoff stretched taut as a bowstring, one wrong move away from bloodshed. Then Kira, displaying the wisdom that had made her an enforcer, made the call. Fall back, she ordered. Slowly. The Riverbend wolves retreated step by step, their eyes never leaving the feral. When they reached the tree line, Kira looked back one last time. This isn't mercy, she said. This is madness. When that thing turns on you, and it will, you'll die. And that baby will die with you. Maybe, Kaela agreed, but she'll die free, not caged in someone else's idea of safety. Kira shook her head and shifted. The pack vanished into the forest like ghosts. Kaela held her position for another 5 minutes before finally allowing herself to shift back. Leora was wide awake, staring at the feral with those golden eyes, showing no fear at all. If anything, she seemed fascinated. The black wolf turned its massive head toward the baby and whined softly. And Leora, impossible child that she was, reached out one tiny hand toward the creature. No! Kaela pulled back instinctively. Don't! But Leora was already stretching, straining toward the wolf with single-minded baby determination. And the feral, this beast that should have been nothing but hunger and rage, lowered its huge head until it was within the baby's reach. Leora touched the wolf's nose with one finger. The creature froze, absolutely still. Its eyes closed, and that broken whine came again, full of such profound grief that Kaela felt tears burning in her own eyes. You know her, Kaela whispered. You know who she is, what she is. The wolf opened its eyes and looked at Kaela, and she saw it clearly now. The intelligence, the desperation, the love. This wasn't a mindless feral. This was someone trapped. Someone who'd lost everything and been broken by it, but was still fighting to protect the one thing they had left. The baby. Tell me, Kaela said. Please. I need to understand. The wolf pulled back from Leora's touch and turned toward the mountains. It looked back once, its meaning unmistakable. Follow me. Kaela hesitated. Every instinct screamed that this was insane, that following a feral anywhere was suicide. But those same instincts had told her to abandon Leora in the ravine, and look how that had turned out. Sometimes survival meant trusting the impossible. "Okay," she said quietly. "Lead the way." The wolf set off at a lope, glancing back frequently to make sure Kaela was following. She shifted, securing Leora carefully, and ran after the creature into the deep wilderness, where answers waited like teeth in the dark. The wolf led her deeper into the mountains than Kaela had ever ventured. They traveled for hours through terrain that grew increasingly treacherous. Narrow passes where one misstep meant a fatal fall, frozen streams that cracked ominously underfoot, slopes so steep that Kaela had to use her claws to maintain purchase. The feral moved with surprising grace despite its size, navigating the hostile landscape as if it had walked this path 1,000 times. Leora remained quiet throughout the journey, her small body warm against Kaela's chest. Occasionally she would make soft cooing sounds, and each time the black wolf's ears would swivel back toward them, listening, checking. They climbed higher. The air grew thinner, colder, sharp enough to cut. Kaela's lungs burned with each breath, but she pushed forward, driven by a need to understand that had become as vital as hunger. Whatever truth waited at the end of this journey, it was worth the risk. Just before sunset, they reached a plateau hidden between 3 towering peaks. The area was sheltered from the worst of the wind, and snow sat lighter here. In the center of the clearing stood the ruins of what had once been a structure. Stone walls collapsed inward, timber beams blackened by fire, everything reclaimed by ice and time. The feral stopped at the edge of the ruins and turned to look at Kaela. Then deliberately, it walked inside. Kaela shifted back to human form, her breath misting in the frigid air. She adjusted Leora in her arms and followed, stepping carefully over rubble and debris. Inside what had once been the main room, the wolf sat waiting. Around it, scattered across the frozen ground, were the remnants of a life. A child's wooden toy, carved in the shape of a horse. Scraps of fabric that might have been curtains or clothing, too rotted to tell. Broken dishes. And there, half buried in snow that had drifted through the collapsed roof, something that made Kaela's heart stop. A portrait. She knelt and brushed away the ice with shaking hands. The painting was damaged, the colors faded and cracked, but the image was still visible. A woman, young, beautiful, with long dark hair and eyes that seemed to glow even in paint. She wore a gown of deep blue silk, and around her neck hung a pendant bearing the same crest Kaela had seen on Leora's wrapping cloth. Crown above crescent moon. Wolves running in an endless circle. Beside the woman in the portrait stood a man, tall, powerfully built, with black hair and eyes that were rendered in a shade of amber that couldn't possibly be natural. He had one arm around the woman's shoulders, the other resting on her visibly pregnant belly. His expression was fierce and proud and unbearably tender. Kaela looked up at the feral wolf. It sat perfectly still, its eyes fixed on the portrait with an intensity that was almost unbearable to witness. "This was your home," Kaela whispered. "Your family." The wolf's only response was a low, keening whine. Kaela studied the portrait more closely, her mind racing. The woman was clearly pregnant in the painting, which meant she looked at Leora, then back at the image. The timeline fit. Barely, but it fit. "The woman in the ravine," Kaela said slowly. "That was her. Your mate." The wolf shuddered, its massive frame trembling. "And you're—" Kaela's voice broke. "You're the father." The creature's head dropped, nose nearly touching the frozen ground. Grief radiated from it in waves so powerful Kaela could almost taste it. She looked around the ruins with new eyes, piecing together a story written in ash and ice. A home burned, a family destroyed, a man who'd lost everything and been broken so completely he couldn't find his way back to human form. "What happened here?" Kaela asked. "Who did this?" The wolf raised its head and growled, not at her but at some absent enemy. The sound was pure rage, pure hatred, barely contained beneath a veneer of feral madness. Then Leora made a sound, just a small coo, nothing remarkable. But the effect on the feral was immediate and dramatic. All the rage drained away, replaced by that same careful gentleness it had shown before. The massive head swung toward the baby, and the wolf crept forward on its belly, moving with painful slowness. Kaela's grip on Leora tightened instinctively, but she forced herself to remain still. to trust. The wolf came close enough that its breath washed over them both. It sniffed at Leora carefully, thoroughly, taking in her scent. Then, very gently, it pressed its nose against the baby's tiny hand. Leora grabbed the wolf's whiskers and yanked. Any other predator would have reacted with violence. The feral just froze, eyes wide, as the baby tugged and pulled with gleeful baby strength. A sound emerged from the creature's throat. Not a growl or a whine, but something closer to a laugh. Broken and rusty and barely recognizable, but a laugh nonetheless. Tears streamed down Kaela's face. You can't shift back, can't hold her, can't tell her who you are. The wolf carefully extracted its whiskers from Leora's grip and pulled back. Its eyes met Kaela's, and she saw acknowledgement there, acceptance of a fate worse than death. How long? Kaela asked. How long have you been like this? The wolf turned and walked to the far corner of the ruins. There, carved into a stone that had once been part of the wall, were marks. Tally marks. Hundreds of them, scratched into rock with claws that must have bled from the effort. Kaela counted, then counted again, not believing the number. 3 years. 3 years, she breathed. You've been trapped for 3 years? The wolf's confirmation was in its silence. Kaela's mind reeled. 3 years ago, this place had burned. 3 years ago, this man had lost his mate, or thought he had lost everything and been so completely shattered that his human half had simply given up, retreated so far that he couldn't find the way back. But some part of him had held on. Some fragment had remembered. And when he'd caught Leora's scent in the wilderness, that fragment had recognized his daughter. She was running, Kaela said, working through the logic. Your mate. She was pregnant and running from whoever burned this place. She must have given birth alone, in the wilderness, and then she looked at the portrait again, at the regal bearing, the expensive clothes. She was trying to get the baby to safety, to hide her. The wolf's ears flattened against its skull. But she didn't make it, Kaela finished softly. She died in that ravine, and Leora would have frozen if I hadn't found her. She looked down at the baby in her arms, seeing her with new understanding. This wasn't just some lost child. This was the daughter of whatever bloodline had been important enough to burn down a home and hunt a pregnant woman through the mountains in winter. Who were you? Kaela asked the wolf. Before this? What kind of alpha lives in isolation, far from any pack? The answer came not from the wolf, but from a new voice behind her. The kind that rules them all. Kaela spun, shifting instantly, Leora secure against her chest. 3 figures stood at the edge of the ruins, 2 men and a woman, all in human form, all wearing heavy traveling cloaks marked with an insignia Kaela didn't recognize. Silver wolves on a black background. Royal Guard. The woman stepped forward, her hand raised in a gesture of peace. She was older, perhaps 50, with steel-gray hair and scars that spoke of a lifetime of combat. Easy, we're not here to fight. Then what are you here for? Kaela demanded, very aware of the feral wolf rising behind her with a growl that shook the air. The truth. The woman's eyes flicked to Leora, and something like relief crossed her face. And apparently we found it. The princess lives. Princess. The word hung in the frozen air like a blade. I don't know what you're talking about, Kaela said. Yes, you do. The woman's gaze was steady. You found a baby wrapped in royal cloth, with alpha eyes and a scent that marks her as House Nightfang. You've been protecting her for months, and you've somehow earned the protection of... She looked past Kaela to the feral wolf, and her expression shifted to something like grief. Oh, ancestors. Aldrich. The wolf's growl intensified, but the woman didn't back down. I'm Commander Thessa Greymane, formerly of King Aldrich Nightfang's Royal Guard. These are my lieutenants, Jorah and Mira. We've been searching for the princess since the night of the palace attack. Palace attack, Kaela repeated numbly. 3 years ago. Thessa's voice was grim. Aldrich Nightfang ruled the northern kingdoms from the capital at Iron Peak. His bloodline is the oldest and strongest in the north, descended from the first wolves themselves. His mate, Queen Alara, was carrying their first child when the coup happened. Coup, Kaela echoed. trying to process information that was reshaping everything she thought she understood. Aldrich's brother, Prince Caius, wanted the throne. He had support from several powerful packs who resented Aldrich's reforms: laws protecting weaker packs, redistribution of hunting territories, bans on blood challenges. Caius promised to restore the old ways. Strength above all, survival of the strongest. Kaela's stomach turned. She knew those laws. Frostridge had followed them religiously. The attack was brutal and coordinated, Thessa continued. They hit the palace at midnight during the winter solstice when most of the guard was occupied with ceremonial duties. Caius's forces burned half the compound before we could mount a defense. King Aldrich fought like a demon, but he was protecting Alara, and she was 9 months pregnant, vulnerable. The wolf behind Kaela was shaking now, its whole body vibrating with suppressed rage. "We got the queen out through a hidden passage," Thessa said. "A dozen of us, all sworn to protect her with our lives. But Caius's hunters were relentless. They tracked us for weeks. One by one, we fell. By the time we reached the northern mountains, only 3 guards remained. We begged Alara to hide, to let us draw the hunters away, but she refused. She said she felt the baby coming and wouldn't risk giving birth in flight." "This place," Kaela said, looking around the ruins. "This was where she hid." Thessa nodded. "We built it in 3 days. Not much, but shelter. Defensible. Alara gave birth here, a healthy girl with her father's eyes. For 2 weeks, we thought we were safe. Then they found us." The wolf made a sound like breaking glass. "Caius's hunters burned the structure with us inside. We fought them off long enough for Alara to escape with the baby, but we all thought she wouldn't make it far. She was weak from childbirth, wounded, alone. We assumed she and the princess died in the wilderness." "And the king?" Kaela asked, though she thought she knew the answer. "Aldrich went feral when he thought his mate and child were dead," Thessa said quietly. "He ripped through Caius's forces like a force of nature, killing dozens before disappearing into the mountains. We've been searching for him for 3 years, hoping to bring him back, hoping he could reclaim his throne in his mind. But ferals," she trailed off, her expression bleak. "Ferals don't come back." The massive black wolf stalked forward, positioning itself between Kaela and the guards. Its meaning was clear. Thessa's eyes widened. "Aldrich, you understand me." The wolf's lip curled back, revealing teeth like daggers. "He's still in there," Kaela said. "Trapped, but aware. He's been protecting Leora since I found her, bringing us food, fighting off threats. He knows who she is." "Then there's hope," Thessa breathed. "If he's still aware, if he can still think—" "He can't shift back," Kaela interrupted. "I've seen him try. Whatever broke him, it broke him completely." Thessa's face fell. Then he's lost to us." "No." Kaela's voice was harder than she'd intended. "He's not lost. He's here. He's fighting every day to stay present, to protect his daughter. That's not lost. That's surviving." One of the male guards, Jorah, spoke up. "Commander, we need to return to Iron Peak with the princess. If Caius knows she's alive, he'll send every hunter in the kingdom to kill her," Thessa finished, "which is why we need to move carefully." Kaela's arms tightened around Leora. "You're not taking her." "We're not your enemy," Thessa said. "We're sworn to protect the royal family. That includes the princess. I've been protecting her for 5 months. Through a northern winter. Alone. She's alive because of me. And we're grateful. I don't want your gratitude. I want your oath that she'll be safe." Thessa met Kaela's eyes. "You have it. On my honor as a royal guard, on my life itself, I will die before I let harm come to that child." "Words," Kaela said flatly. "I've heard words before. From my pack, when they exiled me, from Riverbend, when they tried to take her. Everyone has words. What matters is action." "Then watch our actions," Thessa said. "We've been tracking you for 2 weeks, waiting for an opening. We could have taken the baby by force a dozen times. We didn't. We waited because we wanted to understand who you were, what you wanted." "I want her to live," Kaela said simply. "So do we. Which is why we need to work together." The feral wolf growled low, and Thessa's attention shifted to it. "Aldrich," she said gently, I know you can't respond in words, but if you can understand me, know this. Your daughter lives. She's healthy and strong, and she's been protected by this woman with a ferocity that would make you proud. But Caius still holds the throne. He's declared the Nightfang line extinct, consolidated power, and the kingdom suffers under his rule. If you want justice for Alara, if you want a future for your daughter, we need to restore you. The wolf's growl faded to uncertain silence. There are healers at Iron Peak, Thessa continued. Mindwalkers who specialize in shifter trauma. They might be able to help you find your way back. It's a slim chance, but it's a chance. Kaela felt hope flare in her chest, dangerous and desperate. Could they really help him? Maybe, if enough of his human consciousness remains. Thessa looked at the feral wolf with something like pity. But the journey to Iron Peak is dangerous. Caius has patrols everywhere. If they discover we're transporting the princess, they'll attack with everything they have. Then we don't tell them, Kaela said. We move quietly. Small group. We avoid the main routes. Thessa raised an eyebrow. We? You think I'm letting her out of my sight? Kaela's voice could have cut stone. I didn't survive a northern winter alone to hand her off to strangers at the first opportunity. You'd be walking into the heart of enemy territory. If we're captured, you'll be executed along with the rest of us. I've been dead since the day I was exiled, Kaela said. Everything since then has been borrowed time. I'll spend it protecting her. Thessa studied her for a long moment. Then, slowly, she smiled. You'd have made a good royal guard. I was a good hunter. That'll do. It will indeed. Thessa turned to her lieutenants. We leave at dawn. Mira, scout the southern route. Jorah, inventory our supplies. We'll need enough for... She paused, looking at the feral wolf. 5. Enough for 5. The wolf's ears pricked forward. You're coming with us, Thessa told him. King Aldrich Nightfang doesn't abandon his daughter, not even when he's trapped in a nightmare he can't wake from. The massive creature took a step forward, then another. It looked at Leora, then at Kaela, then back at Thessa. The intelligence in its eyes was heartbreaking. We'll find a way, Thessa promised, or we'll die trying. Those are the only 2 options worth considering. They made camp in the ruins that night. Kaela refused to sleep inside any structure, uncomfortable with walls after months in the wilderness. So Thessa had the guards build a fire in the open area where the roof had collapsed. They shared rations, real food, not just meat, and Kaela almost cried at the taste of bread and dried fruit. Leora was passed around the group, each guard taking a turn holding the princess they'd spent years searching for. She charmed them all with her golden eyes and ready smiles, completely oblivious to the danger surrounding her existence. She's growing fast, Mira observed, cradling the baby with the practiced ease of someone who'd held many children. Too fast. At this rate, she'll be walking in another month. Royal blood, Thessa explained at Kaela's questioning look. The first wolves were said to mature faster than common shifters. It's one of the markers of the bloodline. She'll reach physical maturity by age 12, maybe 13, but her mind will develop normally. So she'll be a child in an adult's body? Kaela asked, disturbed. She'll be a shifter coming into her full power earlier than most. It's both gift and curse. The early strength means she can defend herself. The delayed mental maturity means she'll need guidance for years longer than her body suggests. Kaela watched Leora grab at Mira's fingers, marveling at the strength in that tiny grip. I've been calling her Leora. It's a good name, Thessa said. Traditional. It means light in darkness. Fitting, considering. Does she have a real name, one her mother gave her? Thessa shook her head. Alara died before she could perform the naming ceremony. As far as the kingdom knows, the princess was never born. Leora works perfectly. The feral wolf, Aldrich, lay at the edge of the firelight, watching everything. He hadn't approached the guards directly, maintaining a careful distance. But his eyes never left Leora. Can I ask you something? Kaela said to Thessa. Before all this, before the coup, what kind of king was he? Thessa stared into the fire, her expression distant. The best I've ever served. Aldrich wasn't raised to rule. He was the younger brother, the spare heir. He spent his youth traveling the kingdom, living among common packs, learning how they survived. When his father died and his older brother abdicated, didn't want the responsibility, Aldrich took the throne reluctantly. But once he committed, he transformed the kingdom. How? He remembered what it was like to go hungry, to watch pack members die in winter because there wasn't enough food, to see strong wolves bully weak ones with impunity because that was tradition. He changed those laws, created the supply caches that would be stocked in every territory, banned blood challenges except in cases of genuine pack danger, made it illegal to exile juveniles or nursing mothers. Kaela's breath caught. If those laws had existed in Frost Ridge. He made enemies, Thessa continued, powerful ones. Alphas who'd built their authority on strength alone, who saw his reforms as weakness. Caius gathered them all, promised them a return to the old ways. And when Aldrich's attention was on his pregnant mate, they struck. And now he's trapped, Kaela said quietly, looking at the massive wolf in the shadows. Everything he built, everything he fought for, all of it destroyed. Not all of it, Thessa nodded toward Leora. His daughter lives. His bloodline continues. As long as she survives, there's hope for the kingdom. That's a lot of weight for a baby to carry. She won't carry it alone. She'll have us, and apparently she'll have you. Kaela felt the truth of it settle into her bones. She'd thought saving Leora was a one-time choice, a single act of defiance against a cruel world. But it wasn't. It was a commitment that would shape the rest of her life. She looked down at the baby sleeping against her chest, at the tiny face so peaceful in slumber. Yeah, she said softly. She'll have me. They set out at dawn, moving south through mountain passes that made Kaela's earlier journey look easy. Thessa led with Jorah, both in wolf form, scouting ahead. Mira stayed with Kaela, who carried Leora in a better sling the guards had provided, and Aldrich followed behind, a dark shadow that kept perfect pace. The first 2 days passed without incident. They saw no one, heard nothing but wind and the occasional cry of a hawk. But on the third day, Jorah came racing back to the group, shifting mid-stride. Patrol, he gasped. 8 wolves, Caius's colors, half a mile ahead, moving this direction. Can we avoid them? Thessa demanded. Not without doubling back at least 3 miles. The pass narrows ahead, only one way through. Thessa cursed. They'll scent us the moment we get within 100 yards. So we fight, Kaela said. 8 against 5? When 2 of us can't fight because they're protecting the baby? Thessa shook her head. We'd be slaughtered. Actually, Mira said slowly, 8 against 4, and one absolutely massive feral who terrifies anything with working survival instincts. All eyes turned to Aldrich. The great wolf's ears were pricked forward, his body tense. They don't know what he is, Kaela realized. They'll see a feral and panic. Or they'll see a threat that needs to be eliminated, Thessa countered. Ferals are killed on sight in most territories. Then we make them too frightened to think straight. Kaela's mind was racing. We let Aldrich take point. He charges them, goes full feral, foam, snarls, the whole nightmare. While they're focused on him, we hit them from the sides, fast and brutal. That's insane, Jorah said. It's also our only option, Thessa said grimly. Mira, take Leora and hide. Find a crevice, a cave, anywhere you can defend with a narrow opening. If this goes badly, you run. You get the princess out of these mountains and you don't stop until you reach the coast. Mira's face went pale, but she nodded. She took Leora from Kaela with gentle hands, and the baby, sensing the tension, whimpered softly. Shh, Mira whispered. It's okay, little light. Just stay quiet for me. Kaela turned to Aldrich. The wolf was already watching her, and she saw the question in his eyes. Can you do this? She asked. Can you be the monster they expect? The wolf's lips pulled back from his teeth. The sound that emerged was barely recognizable as anything that had once been human, a snarl of pure, distilled rage that made even Kaela's wolf whimper and press low. I'll take that as a yes, she said. They moved into position. Mira vanished into the rocks with Leora. Thessa and Jorah circled wide to flank the approaching patrol. Kaela stayed with Aldrich, her heart hammering so hard she could feel it in her throat. The patrol came into view 5 minutes later, 8 wolves moving in tight formation, all wearing leather collars marked with Caius's insignia. They were well-fed, well-trained, moving with the easy confidence of soldiers who'd never known real defeat. That was about to change. Aldrich stepped into the center of the pass and roared. The sound was apocalyptic. It echoed off the mountain walls, multiplied and magnified until it seemed to come from everywhere at once. The patrol skidded to a halt, their formation breaking as heads swiveled toward the source. Then they saw him. A massive black wolf, easily twice the size of the largest among them, eyes wild and foam flecking his jaws. He was every nightmare story about ferals made flesh, and he was standing between them and their destination. The patrol's leader, a gray wolf with battle scars, snarled orders, trying to reorganize his troops, but fear was already spreading through the pack like fire. Kaela could smell it, sharp and acrid. Aldrich charged. He moved like an avalanche, unstoppable and devastating. The patrol scattered, their training forgotten in the face of pure terror. Aldrich caught the first wolf and threw it into a rock wall with bone-breaking force. He clamped jaws around the second's throat and shook once, viciously. That's when Thessa and Jorah attacked from the flanks. The patrol never stood a chance. Caught between a feral and two royal guards who'd trained for this their entire lives, they crumbled. 3 died in the first minute. 2 more fell in the second. The remaining 3 broke and ran, leaving their dead behind. Thessa started to pursue, but Aldrich cut her off with a warning growl. He jerked his head toward where Mira had hidden with Leora. The message was clear. Protect the princess. Everything else is secondary. He's right, Kaela said, shifting back to human form. We need to move. The ones who escaped will report back. Caius will know we're here. Then we run, Thessa said grimly. We run, and we don't stop. They ran. Through the rest of that day and into the night, pushing themselves beyond exhaustion. Mira rejoined them with Leora, who somehow slept through the chaos, cradled against the guard's chest. They moved through terrain that should have killed them. Ice fields where one wrong step meant a fatal plunge. Avalanche zones where every sound could trigger disaster. Exposed ridges where the wind tried to peel the skin from their bones. But they ran. On the 5th day, Jorah collapsed. One moment he was loping ahead of the group. The next, he was down, blood frothing from his mouth. Poison, Thessa said, examining him with shaking hands. The wolf he killed. The blood must have been poisoned. Some of Caius's guards use it on their fangs as a last resort. Can we save him? Kaela demanded. Thessa's expression was answer enough. Jorah shifted back to human form with obvious effort. He was young, Kaela realized, maybe 25, his whole life ahead of him. Get her out, he whispered to Thessa. The princess. Get her out. We will, Thessa promised, tears streaming down her face. I swear it. Jorah's eyes closed. He was gone before his next breath. They buried him in a shallow grave, marking it with stones they promised to return for. Then they kept moving, because stopping meant death. On the 7th day they saw Iron Peak. It rose from the valley like a fang of stone, a massive fortress built into the mountain itself, with walls 50 feet high and towers that scraped the clouds. Smoke rose from thousands of chimneys, and even from this distance, Kaela could see wolves moving on the ramparts. There, Thessa said. Home. Looks more like a prison, Kaela muttered. Right now, it's both. Thessa's voice was grim. Caius holds the throne, but not everyone supports him. There are loyalists still inside, guards, nobles, common folk who remember Aldrich's rule. If we can reach them, if we can show them the princess' lives. We start a civil war, Kaela finished. We finish one that began 3 years ago. They descended toward the valley as darkness fell. Thessa led them to a hidden entrance, a cave system that ran beneath the fortress walls, known only to the royal guard. They moved through absolute darkness, following Thessa's lead by scent and sound alone. When they finally emerged, it was into a small room deep within the fortress. Stone walls, a single oil lamp, and standing in the shadows, waiting, was a figure in royal guard armor. Commander, the guard said, welcome home. Captain Riven, Thessa clasped the man's arm in greeting. Status? Worse every day. Caius grows paranoid. He's executing anyone he suspects of disloyalty. The dungeons are full, the people are terrified, and the other kingdoms are beginning to talk of invasion. If something doesn't change soon, it will, Thessa said. She turned to Kaela. Show him. Kaela stepped forward and carefully adjusted the blanket around Leora. The baby yawned, her golden eyes opening slowly. Riven's breath caught. Ancestors preserve us. She's real. Very real, Thessa confirmed. And she needs protection. I want her in the deep chambers, maximum security. No one sees her except trusted guards. No one. What about the king? Riven asked, then froze. His eyes had found Aldrich, who'd entered the room behind them. What in the frozen hells is that? That, Thessa said quietly, is your king. What's left of him? The room fell silent. King Aldrich? Riven's voice was barely a whisper. But he's feral, I know. But he's aware. He understands speech, recognizes his daughter. There might be a way to bring him back. The Mindwalkers, Riven said immediately. I'll send for them. A bell began to toll somewhere above them, deep, resonant, alarming. What is that? Kaela demanded. Riven's face went white. The attack bell. The fortress is under assault. Impossible, Thessa said. We weren't followed, I'm certain. Not from outside. Riven was already moving toward the door. From inside. Kaios must have discovered something, set a trap. The door exploded inward. Soldiers poured into the room, a dozen of them, armed and armored. And behind them, stepping through the broken doorway with a smile that promised death, came a man who could have been Aldrich's twin. Same black hair, same powerful build, same amber eyes. But where Aldrich's expression in the portrait had been gentle, this man's was cruel. Hello, brother, Kaios said, looking at the feral wolf with amusement. I've missed you, and you've brought me such a wonderful gift. His eyes locked onto Leora, and Kaela felt her blood turn to ice. The princess, Kaios purred. Alive after all. How delightful. I'll enjoy killing her almost as much as I enjoyed killing her mother. Aldrich's roar shook the fortress to its foundations. The world exploded into violence. Aldrich launched himself at Kaios with a roar that cracked stone, his massive body a blur of black fur and fury. The usurper king barely had time to shift before 300 pounds of enraged feral slammed into him, sending them both crashing through the doorway in a tangle of snapping jaws and raking claws. Protect the princess! Thessa screamed, her blade already singing from its sheath. Kaela didn't need to be told twice. She grabbed Leora and dove behind an overturned table just as Kaios' soldiers surged forward. The room became a battlefield, steel against claw, tooth against armor, the stone floor slick with blood within seconds. Mira appeared at Kaela's side, her wolf form positioned between them and the chaos. The passage, she snarled, the words barely human. Behind the lamp, go! Kaela's fingers found the hidden latch, even as the sounds of combat intensified. A section of wall swung inward, revealing a narrow tunnel that descended into darkness. She hesitated, looking back at the battle. Thessa was holding off 3 soldiers at once, her movements a deadly dance of precision and experience. Riven fought beside her, his blade finding gaps in armor with surgical accuracy. But they were outnumbered, and more soldiers were pouring through the broken door. Go! Mira howled again, and this time Kaela obeyed. She plunged into the tunnel with Leora clutched against her chest, the baby miraculously still silent. Behind her, she heard Mira's snarl cut off abruptly, heard something heavy hit the floor. She forced herself not to look back, forced herself to run deeper into the darkness, even as every instinct screamed to fight. The tunnel twisted and turned, descending steadily. Kaela's wolf sight let her navigate without light, but the air grew stale and cold. Ancient. This passage was old, probably built when the fortress was first constructed, a last escape route for royalty in crisis. She'd been running for perhaps 10 minutes when she heard the footsteps behind her, heavy, fast, multiple sets. Kaela's heart hammered. She couldn't fight while holding Leora, couldn't risk the baby in combat. She needed to hide, to find somewhere defensible, somewhere. The tunnel opened into a wider chamber. Stone walls stretched up into darkness, and in the center sat a raised platform with what looked like ancient ceremonial markings carved into the rock. But what caught Kaela's attention was the second passage leading out the far side. A choice. Stand and fight or keep running. Leora made a small sound against her chest, and Kaela made her decision. She ran for the far passage just as the soldiers emerged behind her.
Their shouts echoed off the stone, harsh and triumphant.
They thought they had her cornered. They were wrong. Kaela burst out of the passage into what could only be described as the heart of the fortress. A massive underground chamber lit by hundreds of oil lamps filled with people, common folk, guards in loyalist colors, nobles in expensive but worn clothing. They turned as one when she emerged, weapons rising, voices raised in alarm. "Wait!" Kaela shouted, her voice cracking with desperation. "I'm not your enemy." "She's with the commander," someone called out. A woman in guard armor, her face scarred but kind. "Stand down!" The weapons lowered fractionally, but the suspicion remained. "She has a baby," another voice said, confused. Kaela looked down at Leora, then back at the gathered crowd. These were the loyalists, the ones who'd waited 3 years for a king who would never return, for a royal bloodline they thought extinct. These were Aldrich's people, and she was about to give them their miracle. "Not just a baby," Kaela said, her voice carrying across the chamber. She pulled back the blanket, revealing Leora's face. "The princess. King Aldrich's daughter. She lives." The chamber fell silent. Then chaos erupted, not violent, but overwhelming. People surged forward, voices overlapping in a cacophony of disbelief and hope and desperate questions. The scarred guard pushed through the crowd, her eyes locked on Leora. "The eyes," she breathed. "Golden, like the king's, like the first wolves." Her gaze snapped to Kaela. "Where did you find her?" "In a ravine 5 months ago," Kaela said. "Her mother was dead. She would have frozen if I'd left her." "And you didn't, even though—" The guard gestured at Kaela's worn, scarred appearance. "Even though it must have cost you everything?" "It did. My pack exiled me for saving her. I've been living in the wilderness ever since." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Kaela caught fragments. Exile. Sacrifice. Protected the royal bloodline. The scarred guard dropped to one knee. "My name is Sarah. I served King Aldrich for 10 years before the coup. If that child is truly his daughter, then my sword is hers. My life is hers." One by one, the others in the chamber followed suit. Guard and noble and common folk alike, all kneeling before a baby they'd thought lost forever. Kaela felt tears burning in her eyes. "She needs your protection. Kaios knows she's alive. He's attacking right now. The commander and the others are fighting him in the upper levels." Sarah's expression hardened. "Then we end this. Tonight. We've been waiting for a sign, something to rally around. The princess is that sign." "She's a baby," Kaela protested. "She can't lead a revolution. She doesn't have to lead it. She just has to exist." Sarah stood, addressing the crowd. 3 years we've waited. 3 years we've watched chaos destroy everything King Aldrich built. He's filled the dungeons with anyone who speaks against him, stripped the supply caches to fund his personal guard, brought back blood challenges and exile laws. The kingdom bleeds under his rule. "And now we have proof he lied," someone called out. "He said the royal line was extinct, but the princess lives." "Which means Caius is a usurper," Sarah continued. "No claim to the throne, no legitimacy. And that means every order he's given, every law he's passed, every execution he's ordered, all of it is void." The energy in the chamber shifted. What had been a gathering of frightened refugees became something else, something dangerous, an army. "We take back the fortress," Sarah said. "We free the prisoners. We remove Caius from power, tonight." "He has 100 soldiers," someone protested. "Trained fighters. We're mostly civilians. Civilians who've spent 3 years preparing for this moment." Sarah's smile was sharp. "We know every passage, every weak point, every secret entrance in this fortress. Caius's soldiers don't. We use that. We hit them from everywhere at once, create chaos, divide their forces, and we do it now, while they're focused on the commander's group." Kaela looked down at Leora, at the tiny face that had somehow become the symbol of hope for an entire kingdom. The baby was watching her with those golden eyes, and Kaela saw trust there, complete and absolute. "Keep her safe," Kaela said, holding Leora out to Sarah. "Whatever happens, she survives." Sarah took the baby with gentle hands. "Where are you going?" "To help the commander, and to find the king." "The king is dead," Sarah said quietly. "Or as good as. The reports say he went feral years ago." "He's not dead." Kaela's voice was iron. "He's trapped. But he's still fighting. I've seen it."
Something in her tone made Sarah pause. You've seen him? The feral? I fought beside him. He's been protecting Lior since I found her. He recognizes her, knows who she is. He's still in there, Sarah. Your king is still in there. Sarah's eyes widened. If that's true, if the Mindwalkers could reach him, then Caius doesn't just lose his throne. He loses to the man he thought he'd destroyed. Kaela's smile was fierce. Let's give him that gift.
The tunnel behind her exploded with sound. Caius's soldiers were coming, their shouts echoing off stone. Go, Sarah said, already moving toward a side passage with Leora. We'll handle them. You find the king. Kaela shifted, letting her wolf surge forward with relief. She'd been human too long, and her body sang with the joy of transformation. She was smaller than most fighters, leaner, built for endurance rather than power. But she was fast, and right now she needed to be faster than she'd ever been in her life. She bolted back toward the ceremonial chamber, toward the sounds of combat that echoed from above. The fortress was a maze of passages and stairs, but her nose guided her, following the scent of blood and fury and the distinctive musk of the feral wolf who'd become her unlikely ally. She burst into the upper level to find carnage. Bodies littered the hallway, mostly Caius's soldiers, but some in loyalist colors too. The fighting had moved, leaving only the dead behind. Kaela followed the trail of destruction, her paws silent on stone slick with blood. The sounds led her to the throne room. It was massive, high vaulted ceilings, pillars carved with wolf imagery, a dais at the far end where a throne of black stone sat empty. And in the center, Aldrich and Caius fought with a savagery that defied description. Both were in wolf form now, Aldrich's massive black frame against Caius's slightly smaller but more agile brown. They moved like thunder and lightning, each strike powerful enough to shatter bone. Aldrich fought with feral abandon, all instinct and rage. Caius fought with calculated precision, years of combat training evident in every movement. They were equally matched, and both were bleeding. Around the edges of the room, Thessa and Riven fought Caius's personal guard, the elite soldiers who'd survived the coup and stayed loyal to the usurper. The loyalists were skilled, but they were exhausted. Kaela could see it in the slowness of their parries, the slight stumble in their footwork. They were losing. Kaela didn't hesitate. She launched herself at the nearest of Caius's guards, her jaws finding the soft flesh of his throat before he even registered her presence. She ripped and tore, felt hot blood flood her mouth, and moved to the next target before the first had finished falling. Kaela! Thessa's shout was half warning, half relief. The Mindwalkers! We need them! Where? Kaela snarled around a mouthful of fur. East Tower, but they won't come without... The rest of her words were lost as Caius's largest guard slammed into Kaela with the force of an avalanche. She hit the floor hard, ribs cracking, the air driven from her lungs. The guard's jaws descended toward her throat, and she knew she was dead. Then Aldrich was there. The feral king caught Caius's guard in midair and broke him like a toy. The sound of the guard's spine snapping echoed through the throne room. Aldrich dropped the body and turned back to his brother without missing a beat. But that moment of distraction cost him. Caius lunged, his jaws clamping around Aldrich's front leg. Bone crunched. The feral howled in pain and rage, trying to shake his brother off. But Caius held on with vicious determination. You were always weak, Caius growled, the words barely understandable through his wolf form. Always caring more about others than yourself. That's why I won. That's why I'll always win. Aldrich's response was inarticulate fury. He twisted, using his superior mass to throw Caius against a pillar. The impact should have broken the usurper's spine. Instead, Caius rolled with it, came up fighting, and lunged again. Kaela forced herself to her feet despite the agony in her ribs. She could see it now, the terrible truth. Aldrich was stronger, but Caius was smarter. The feral fought on instinct alone, powerful but predictable. Caius exploited every opening, every moment of wild abandon. If this continued, Aldrich would lose. Thessa! Kaela shouted. The Mindwalkers! Now! Well, they won't come without royal authority. Then I'll bring them royal authority. Kaela shifted back to human form, ignoring her nakedness, ignoring the blood streaming down her side. She ran for the doors that led to the East Tower, her bare feet slapping against stone. Behind her, she heard Thessa scream something, heard Caius laugh, a terrible, triumphant sound. The tower stairs seemed to go on forever, up and up, spiraling into darkness, each step agony on her damaged ribs. But Kaela didn't slow, couldn't slow. She burst into the Mindwalker's chamber at a dead run. 3 robed figures looked up from their meditation, expressions ranging from surprise to annoyance. They were older, 2 women and a man, all with the white-filmed eyes that marked them as those who walked in mental spaces rather than physical. "The king needs you," Kaela gasped. "Now!" The eldest woman, ancient, her face a map of wrinkles, shook her head. "We serve the throne. Caius has not requested—" "Caius is a usurper and a traitor." Kaela's voice cracked with desperation. "The true king lives. He fights for his throne right now, but he's trapped in feral form, and he's losing." "The king is dead," the woman said flatly. "Aldrich Nightfang fell 3 years ago." "He didn't fall. He was broken. But he's still fighting. I've seen it. I fought beside him." Kaela took a step forward. "His daughter lives, Princess Leora. She's in the lower chambers right now, protected by loyalists. If you don't help me save her father, Caius will find her and kill her." That got their attention. All 3 Mindwalkers went still. "The princess lives," the man whispered. "And she has her father's eyes. Golden. Pure. The mark of the first wolves." Kaela's voice dropped to barely a whisper. "Help me save him, please." The eldest woman stood, her movements stiff with age, but her purpose clear. If I'm lying, you can walk my mind afterward and tear the truth from me," Kaela said. "But by then it'll be too late." The woman's blind eyes seemed to see straight through her. Then she nodded. "Show us." They moved faster than Kaela expected, following her down the stairs with surprising agility. When they reached the throne room, the scene had deteriorated into desperate chaos. Aldrich was down, his injured leg unable to support his weight. Blood matted his black fur, and one eye was swollen shut. Caius stood over him, jaws parted for the killing bite. Thessa and Riven were trying to reach them, but Caius's remaining guards held them back. It was over. They'd lost. "Now!" Kaela screamed at the Mindwalkers. "Do it now!" The 3 robed figures spread out, forming a triangle around the fighting wolves. Their hands rose, and they began to chant in a language that predated the northern kingdoms, words that tasted of old magic and older power. The air in the throne room changed, thickened. Caius froze mid-strike, confusion flickering across his wolf features. Aldrich's snarls cut off abruptly. Both brothers stood locked in place, their bodies still but their eyes wild. "We're inside," the eldest Mindwalker said, her voice distant. "But the feral's mind is— broken isn't the right word. Shattered. Fragmented. There are pieces of consciousness scattered throughout, each one holding onto a different memory, a different moment. We need an anchor, something to pull them all together." "Use me," Kaela said immediately. "You're not Pack. You don't have a bond." "I have something better." Kaela shifted, moved to where Aldrich stood frozen, and pressed her forehead against his. "I have his daughter's trust. I have months of fighting beside him, of protecting what he loves. If that's not enough to anchor him, nothing is." The eldest Mindwalker's expression was doubtful, but she nodded. "Open your mind. This will hurt." It was worse than hurt. The moment the Mindwalker's power touched her, Kaela felt like she was being torn apart. Her consciousness exploded outward, reaching through some space that wasn't quite real, following threads of connection she couldn't see but somehow knew were there. And then she was inside Aldrich's mind. It was a wasteland, a howling void of grief and rage and pain, so profound it defied comprehension. Fragments of memory floated like debris. A woman's laugh, the weight of a crown, the smell of smoke and burning flesh, a baby's cry, blood on stone, the feeling of bones breaking as the wolf consumed the man. "Aldrich," Kaela's voice echoed in the emptiness. "I know you're here. I know you can hear me." Nothing. Just the wind and the screams and the endless, crushing weight of loss. "Your daughter is alive," Kaela said. "Leora, she survived. I found her in that ravine and I saved her. I've kept her safe for 5 months. She's downstairs right now, protected by people who love you. But she needs her father. She needs you to come back." A flicker, just a hint of awareness in the chaos.
I know it hurts, Kaela continued, following that flicker like a lifeline. I know you lost everything. Your mate, your home, your kingdom.
I know the pain drove you into the wolf and you couldn't find your way back, but you're still in here. You've been fighting this whole time, keeping just enough humanity to protect her, to recognize her. The awareness grew stronger, took shape, a shadow that might have been a man. Come back, Kaela whispered. Not for me, not for the kingdom, for her, for Liora. She deserves to know her father. She deserves to grow up hearing about the king who changed the North, who fought for the weak, who loved so fiercely he broke when he lost. The shadow solidified. Features emerged, Aldrich's face, haggard and worn but recognizable. I can't, he said, his voice rusty from disuse. I've been the wolf too long. I don't remember how to be anything else. Then learn again. Kaela held out her hand in that impossible space between minds. One piece at a time, one memory at a time. Let me help you. Why? The question was raw with suspicion and desperate hope. Why would you help me? You don't know me. Don't owe me anything. Because someone has to. Kaela smiled. And I'm stubborn that way. I save things everyone else gives up on. Lost babies, broken kings. It's kind of my specialty. For the first time in 3 years, Aldrich Nightfang laughed. It was a broken sound, barely recognizable as humor, but it was human, real. He took her hand. The world shattered. Kaela slammed back into her body with enough force to knock her off her feet. She hit the throne room floor gasping, her ribs screaming in protest. Around her, the Mindwalkers staggered, their chanting cut off abruptly. In the center of the room, something was happening to Aldrich. The massive black wolf was shrinking, bones cracking and reforming, fur receding. The transformation was wrong, too slow, too painful, like watching a man try to remember how to be human after forgetting for years. Caius, released from the Mindwalker's hold, stared in disbelief. No, it's not possible. You were gone. You were not gone. The voice was rough, barely more than a growl, but it was human. Never gone. Just lost. Aldrich knelt on the stone floor where his wolf had been, naked and scarred and shaking with effort. His black hair hung to his shoulders, matted and wild. His amber eyes were clearer than they'd been in years, though shadows still lurked in their depths. But he was there, present, aware. Hello, brother, Aldrich said softly. We have things to discuss. Caius shifted back to human form, his expression twisted with rage and fear. You're too late. The kingdom is mine. The throne is mine. You're just one broken wolf against my entire army. Actually, Thessa said, stepping forward with her blade drawn, he's one broken wolf with an army of his own. The doors to the throne room burst open. Sarah led the charge, hundreds of loyalists pouring in behind her, guards and nobles and common folk, all armed, all determined. They filled the space, surrounding Caius's remaining soldiers, weapons raised. And in Sarah's arms, watching everything with solemn golden eyes, was Liora. Aldrich's gaze locked onto his daughter, his breath caught. Liora? He whispered, then shook his head, clarity returning. No, not Alara, but her eyes, her face. He looked at Kaela. You saved her. Someone had to, Kaela said again. And you brought her here, through the winter, through the mountains, alone. Not alone. You helped. Aldrich stood on shaking legs, his gaze never leaving Liora. He took one step forward, then another. Sarah met him halfway, carefully transferring the baby into her father's arms. For a long moment, Aldrich just stood there, staring down at his daughter. Tears streamed down his face, cutting tracks through the grime and blood. Hello, little one, he whispered. I'm sorry it took me so long to come back. Liora reached up and grabbed his nose. The throne room erupted in laughter, relieved, joyous, cathartic. Even some of Caius's soldiers were smiling, their weapons lowering. Caius looked around at his crumbling support, at the loyalists surrounding him, at his brother holding the daughter he'd tried so hard to erase from history. This isn't over, he snarled. Actually, Aldrich said, his voice gaining strength, it is. You're under arrest for treason, murder, and attempted regicide. Your co-conspirators will be rounded up, tried and judged according to the law, my law, the one that says justice, not strength, determines who leads. You're in no position to arrest anyone, Kaela spat. You can barely stand. He doesn't need to stand. Sarah stepped forward, her blade at Caius's throat. He has us, and we've waited 3 years for this moment. The remaining soldiers of Caius's guard looked at each other, then, one by one, dropped their weapons. The coup was over. Caius was dragged away screaming threats and curses. Aldrich watched him go with an expression that mixed grief and relief. I should have seen it, he said quietly. Should have known he'd turn. But I thought brotherhood meant something. It does, Kaela said, but not to everyone. Aldrich looked at her properly for the first time. You're the one who saved Leora, the exile. Kaela Thorne. And yes, your former pack, they cast you out for refusing to abandon a stranger's child. They called it maintaining survival during famine. I called it cruelty. Kaela's voice was steady. I made my choice. A choice that saved the kingdom. Aldrich shifted Leora to one arm and held out his hand. Thank you. Those words are insufficient, but they're all I have. Kaela took his hand. His grip was strong despite the trembling. She's a good kid. Worth saving. She's everything. Aldrich looked down at his daughter, and fresh tears spilled over. Alara would be so proud. She died protecting her, you know. Ran through the mountains with a newborn, wounded and alone because she knew I'd want Leora to survive more than anything. She almost didn't make it, Kaela said gently. But she did. And now she's safe. That's what matters. Aldrich nodded slowly. Then he turned to address the assembled crowd. This woman, Kaela Thorne, protected my daughter when no one else would. She sacrificed her pack, her home, her safety to keep the princess alive. That deserves recognition. I don't need recognition, Kaela started, but you'll get it anyway. Aldrich's smile was tired but genuine. You're hereby granted full citizenship in the northern kingdoms, with all rights and privileges. You'll have a home in the palace, a position on my personal guard if you want it, and my eternal gratitude. The crowd cheered. Kaela felt her face flush. I'm not a guard, she protested. I'm a hunter. Then hunt for us. Protect my daughter. Be the one she turns to when I'm occupied with rebuilding a kingdom. Aldrich's amber eyes held hers. You've been her mother for 5 months. I'm not asking you to stop now. The words hit Kaela like a physical blow. Mother. She'd avoided thinking of herself that way, tried to maintain some emotional distance, but hearing it said aloud, hearing it acknowledged, yeah, she said softly. Yeah, I can do that. Leora chose that moment to make a grab for Kaela's hair, her golden eyes bright with recognition. Kaela laughed and let the baby pull, not caring about the pain. We have a lot of work ahead of us, Aldrich said to the crowd. The dungeons need to be emptied. Caius's laws need to be overturned. The supply caches need to be restocked. The kingdom needs to be reminded what justice looks like. But tonight we celebrate. Tonight we remember that hope survives even the darkest winters. The cheering intensified. People were crying and laughing and embracing each other. 3 years of fear and oppression were cracking like ice in spring. Thessa appeared at Aldrich's side, her armor dented and blood-stained, but her smile fierce. Permission to spread the word, my king. The kingdom should know you've returned. Granted. And Thessa? Aldrich's voice softened. Thank you. For never giving up. For searching all this time. You're my king, Thessa said simply. That's what loyalty means. As the celebrations continued around them, Kaela found herself standing slightly apart, watching. This wasn't her world. The politics, the palace intrigue, the weight of a kingdom. She was a hunter from a small frontier pack, more comfortable with trees than thrones. But when she looked at Leora, safe in her father's arms and pulling at his hair with gleeful determination, she felt something settle in her chest. This was where she needed to be. Not because of duty or obligation, but because this tiny, impossible child had claimed her heart completely. Sarah approached, her scarred face gentle. You look lost. Just trying to figure out where I fit in all this, Kaela admitted. Wherever you want. You saved the princess. That gives you more authority than you realize. Sarah gestured at the crowd. Half these people would follow you into battle right now if you asked.
I don't want followers. I just want her safe. Then you're exactly what she needs. Sarah smiled. Kings need advisors who will tell them hard truths. Princesses need guardians who care more about their safety than their politics. You're already doing the job. Might as well accept the title.
Aldrich was making his way through the crowd toward them, Leora still in his arms. Despite his exhaustion, despite the scars and the lingering tremor in his hands, he moved with the grace of someone reclaiming their power. "Kaela," he said when he reached her, "walk with me." They left the throne room through a side passage, moving into quieter corridors. The sounds of celebration faded behind them. "I need to ask you something," Aldrich said once they were alone, "and I need you to be completely honest. All right? The 5 months you spent with Leora, were there any signs of unusual development? Anything concerning?" Kaela thought of the rapid growth, the impossible strength, those moments when Leora's eyes seemed to hold ancient knowledge. "She's growing faster than normal, much faster, and she's strong for her age." Aldrich nodded, unsurprised. "Royal blood, first wolf heritage. It manifests differently in every generation, but there's always accelerated development. She'll be fully grown by 13, maybe 14. Her wolf will emerge early, probably around age 5. Is that dangerous? It can be. A child's mind in a body with that much power. Aldrich's expression grew troubled. Alara and I were prepared to handle it. We'd consulted with every expert, planned her education around the challenges. But now, with Alara gone and me still recovering from 3 years of being feral, Kaela supplied. Yes, I don't know if I can do this alone. You're not alone, Kaela's voice was firm. I meant what I said. I'll protect her, raise her, be whatever she needs. Aldrich stopped walking and turned to face her fully. Why? You could walk away right now, take your reward and disappear. Live peacefully somewhere far from palace intrigue and royal danger. Why would you choose this? Kaela looked down at Leora, who was watching her with those golden eyes that saw too much. Because the night I found her in that ravine, dying in her dead mother's arms, I made a choice. I chose her over my pack, over my safety, over everything I'd known, and I've never regretted it, not once. Not even when you were starving in the wilderness? Not even then. Aldrich's expression softened. You're extraordinary. I hope you know that. I'm stubborn. There's a difference. In my experience, the two often go together. He smiled, and for a moment Kaela could see the king he'd been before tragedy broke him. Strong, kind, wise beyond his years. I'm going to ask something unreasonable of you. More unreasonable than raising a princess with accelerated wolf development? Yes, I'm going to ask you to stay. Not as a guard or a servant, but as family. To be Leora's, he hesitated. I was going to say guardian, but that's not quite right. You've been her mother for 5 months. I'd like you to continue being that, officially. Kaela's breath caught. You want me to co-parent with me? Help me raise her. Give her the stability of 2 people who love her unconditionally. Aldrich's voice was soft but steady. I can be her father and her king, but I can't be everything. And you've already proven you'll die for her. That's worth more than any title or bloodline. Tears burned in Kaela's eyes. I was exiled for being too attached to her. My pack said I was weak. Your pack was wrong. Loving fiercely isn't weakness. It's the bravest thing anyone can do. Leora reached for Kaela, making her urgent baby sounds that clearly meant pick me up. Aldrich handed her over with a knowing smile. The moment Leora settled against Kaela's chest, everything else faded. The palace, the politics, the weight of kingdoms, none of it mattered compared to this small, warm weight in her arms. Yes, Kaela whispered. Yes, I'll stay. Aldrich's relief was palpable. Thank you for everything, for saving her, for bringing her home, for giving me a reason to find my way back from the darkness. You would have found your way eventually. Maybe, but you made it possible to do it while she still needed me. He touched Leora's cheek gently. Now let's go back to the celebration. Our people deserve to see their princess, and their king needs to start rebuilding everything my brother destroyed. They walked back together. A broken king, an exiled hunter,
and a princess who represented hope for an entire kingdom. Behind them, the shadows of the past lingered. Ahead, an uncertain future waited. But for the first time in 3 years, the northern kingdoms had something they'd lost. A reason to believe tomorrow might be better than today. And in a small stone fortress on the edge of the frozen mountains, that was miracle enough. Spring came late to the northern kingdoms that year. The snows lingered through March, painting the mountains white well past their usual thaw. But when the change finally arrived, it came with a vengeance. Torrents of meltwater rushing through valleys, wildflowers exploding across hillsides in riots of color, and a warmth that felt like absolution after the brutal winter. Kaela stood on the eastern terrace of Iron Peak, watching the sunrise paint the peaks gold and pink. 6 months had passed since that chaotic night when everything changed. 6 months of rebuilding, of trials, of watching Aldrich slowly reclaim his throne and his sanity. Behind her, she heard the distinctive sound of small feet running across stone. "Mama, Mama, look!" Kaela turned just in time to catch Leora as the toddler launched herself forward with complete trust in being caught. At 11 months old, Leora looked closer to 3, all gangly limbs and wild golden hair that refused to be tamed. Her eyes sparkled with mischief as she held up a struggling beetle. "I found him. Can I keep him?" "Beetles need to live outside, little light," Kaela said gently, crouching down. "But we can watch him for a bit before we let him go." "But I want him to stay with me." Leora's lower lip trembled. "Like you stay with me." Kaela's heart clenched. Even after 6 months, those moments of fear, the terror that Kaela might leave, still surfaced in Leora's behavior. The Mindwalkers said it was normal for a child who'd experienced early trauma, who'd lost her birth mother so young. The solution was consistency, patience, and endless reassurance. "I'm not going anywhere," Kaela said for perhaps the 1,000th time. "But the beetle has his own family who misses him. We should let him go home to them." Leora considered this, her young face serious. Then she carefully opened her hands and let the beetle crawl away across the stone. "Okay, but he can visit if he wants." "Absolutely." "Can Papa visit too? He's been in meetings forever." Kaela smiled. "Papa's been in meetings for 2 hours. That just feels like forever. It's boring when he's not here. And when you're not here, I don't like when people go away." The fear again, surfacing in a child's straightforward observation. Kaela pulled Leora into a hug. "I know, but sometimes people have to do important things. That doesn't mean they're leaving forever." "Promise?" "Promise." A throat cleared behind them. Aldrich stood in the doorway, dressed in formal council robes that he wore with visible discomfort. His black hair was bound back neatly, and his amber eyes, clearer now than they'd been in years, held a mixture of exhaustion and amusement. "Papa?" Leora squirmed out of Kaela's grip and ran to her father, who scooped her up with practiced ease. "Hello, wildling. What trouble have you been causing?" "I found a beetle. Mama said he had to go home to his family." "Mama's very wise," Aldrich said, meeting Kaela's eyes over Leora's head. His expression held a question. Kaela stood, brushing off her pants. Council ran long? 3 additional hours. Baron Morven contested the land redistribution again. Apparently giving hunting rights to smaller packs violates tradition. Tradition being code for, "I want to keep all the power." "Exactly." Aldrich set Leora down gently. "Go find Sarah. She promised to teach you about tracking this morning." Leora's face lit up. "Really? Can I shift?" "Not until you're 5, and you know that." Aldrich's voice was firm but kind. "But you can learn to track in human form. That's even more important." "Okay." Leora darted off, her feet barely touching the ground. Once she was gone, Aldrich's shoulders sagged. He looked older today, the weight of kingship visible in every line of his face. "Bad session?" Kaela asked. "Frustrating. Half the council wants to return to the old ways. The other half wants radical change overnight. Finding middle ground is like trying to negotiate with mountains." He rubbed his temples. "There are days I miss being feral. At least then my problems were simple. Hunt, survive, protect." "You're still protecting, just on a bigger scale." "I suppose." He looked out over the valley below, his expression distant. "I received word this morning. Frost Ridge Pack sent a delegation. They want an audience."
Kaela went very still. My old pack? They claim they have important information regarding the princess's safety. Aldrich's voice was carefully neutral. They arrive tomorrow. Kaela's hands clenched into fist. She hadn't heard from Frost Ridge since her exile. Hadn't wanted to. The pack that had cast her out into a winter storm with a baby in her arms didn't deserve her acknowledgement. What do they really want? She asked. I suspect they want to grovel. Word of your position here has spread. Every pack in the north knows you're raising the princess, that you have the king's ear. Some of them are probably hoping to leverage that connection. They exiled me for saving her. I know, which is why I wanted to ask you first. Do you want to see them? Kaela thought about it. Part of her wanted to refuse, to let Aldrich send them away with their tails between their legs. But another part, the part that had spent her entire childhood in Frost Ridge, that remembered the good times before the famine and fear, wanted closure. I'll see them, she said finally, but on my terms. Not as a supplicant, as an equal. Aldrich's smile was sharp. I can arrange that. The next day, Kaela stood in the formal receiving hall wearing clothes that still felt foreign, fine leather pants, a tunic embroidered with the royal crest, boots that had never known mud or blood. Her hair was bound back in the style of the royal guard, and at her hip hung a ceremonial blade that was very real and very sharp. Beside her, Aldrich sat on his throne in full regalia. To his right stood Thessa and the other high-ranking guards. To his left, on a smaller throne that had been specially crafted, sat Leora. The princess wore a dress of deep blue silk, the same shade her mother had worn in the portrait, and a small circlet rested on her wild golden hair. She looked like what she was, royalty. The doors opened, and the Frost Ridge delegation entered. Kaela recognized them immediately. Garen Blackmaw led the group, looking older and grayer than she remembered. Behind him came Elder Maris, Torven, the Huntmaster, and 3 other pack members. They walked with the stiff formality of people entering hostile territory. Their eyes found Kaela immediately. She saw shock, recognition, and something that might have been shame flicker across their faces. Your Majesty, Garen said, bowing low. Thank you for granting us audience. Rise, Aldrich said, his voice cool. You requested this meeting. State your purpose. Garen straightened, his gaze flickering between Aldrich and Kaela. We come bearing information relevant to the princess's safety. There have been rumors circulating in the frontier packs, whispers of Caius's remaining supporters planning something. We thought it important to bring this to your attention immediately. I see. And this information couldn't be sent via messenger? We felt it required a personal touch, Your Majesty, given the sensitivity. Or, Kaela said quietly, drawing every eye in the room, you wanted to see if the rumors about me were true, if the exile you cast out really was raising the crown princess. Garen's jaw tightened. Kaela, Guardian Thorn, Aldrich interrupted smoothly. She holds an official title now. You will address her as such. Guardian Thorn, Garen corrected, though the word seemed to pain him. We owe you an apology. An apology. Kaela's laugh was harsh. You cast me into a winter storm with a newborn baby. You told me I'd be killed if I returned. And now you want to apologize? We were wrong. It was Elder Maris who spoke, her blind white eyes somehow finding Kaela in the crowd. We thought we were following the law of survival. We thought we were protecting the pack, but we were just afraid of starving, afraid of change, afraid of showing weakness. And we punished you for being braver than we were. The words hung in the air, simple and devastating. The baby you saved, Maris continued, is the crown princess. The child we would have left to die would have been the death of hope for the entire kingdom. We were not just wrong. We were catastrophically blind. Kaela felt something loosen in her chest. Not forgiveness exactly, but a release of the anger she'd been carrying. You were surviving the only way you knew how. I understand that now. But understanding doesn't erase what happened. No, Garen agreed. It doesn't. Which is why we're here to make formal petition to the crown. He turned to Aldrich. Your Majesty, Frost Ridge Pack wishes to be placed under your direct jurisdiction. We reject the old laws that led us to exile one of our own for an act of mercy. We ask to be taught the new ways. Murmurs rippled through the assembled guards. This was unprecedented, a frontier pack voluntarily submitting to Crown authority. Aldrich leaned forward slightly. You understand what you're asking. Crown jurisdiction means following my laws. No more blood challenges. No more exiles of the vulnerable. Shared hunting territories and supply caches. Your pack's autonomy would be significantly reduced. We understand, Garen said, and we accept. The old ways nearly destroyed us. This winter was even harsher than the last. 3 of our elders died. 4 children starved despite our best efforts. The frontier packs are dying, Your Majesty. We need the support structures you're building. We need to change or we'll cease to exist. Aldrich looked at Kaela. This is your call. They wronged you specifically. You have the right to refuse their petition. Every eye in the hall turned to her. Kaela felt the weight of that attention, felt the power she now held over the people who'd once held power over her. She could refuse. Send them back to the frontier to struggle and fail. Watch Frost Ridge crumble from a distance. It would be just, fair, even. But when she looked at Leora, sitting there in her little throne, watching everything with those 2 knowing eyes, she knew what choice she had to make. I accept their petition, Kaela said, on one condition. Name it, Garen said immediately. Frost Ridge will be required to take in refugees from other frontier packs. Any exile, any outcast, anyone cast out for choosing mercy over cruelty, they get sanctuary with you. And you train your young ones in the new laws. No more children growing up thinking survival means abandoning the weak. Garen's expression shifted through several emotions before landing on respect. Agreed. We'll become a haven for those the old ways would destroy. Then welcome to the New North, Aldrich said. Your petition is accepted. Thessa will work with you on the integration process. The Frost Ridge delegation bowed and withdrew. But before they left, Elder Maris approached Kaela one more time. I'm glad you survived, the old woman said quietly. I'm glad you proved us wrong. And I'm glad that baby had you instead of us. She's better for it. She would have been dead without me, Kaela said bluntly. I know, which is why I've spent every day since your exile praying you both survived. I'm sorry, child, for all of it. Kaela looked at the woman who'd once been like a grandmother to her, who'd slipped her those supplies before her exile, who'd wept as Kaela walked away. I forgive you, Kaela said softly. Not for them, for you. Maris's face crumpled. She reached out, and Kaela let the old woman squeeze her hand once before letting go. When they were gone, Leora scrambled down from her throne and ran to Kaela. Were those bad people? No, little light. Just scared people who made mistakes. Did you forgive them? I did. Why? Kaela picked her up, settling the toddler on her hip. Because holding on to anger hurts the person carrying it more than anyone else. And because I want you to grow up knowing that people can change, that mistakes don't have to be permanent. Leora thought about this with her characteristic seriousness. Okay, I'll remember that. Good girl. Aldrich approached, his formal demeanor dropping away. That was well handled, both the condition you set and the forgiveness you offered. I'm still learning this whole political maneuvering thing. You're a natural. He touched Leora's hair gently. Council session in an hour. Caius's trial. Are you attending? Kaela had been dreading this. Do I have to? No, but I think you should. He tried to kill Leora. You deserve to see justice served. She nodded slowly. All right, let me take her to Sarah first. The trial was held in the Great Hall, with representatives from every major pack in attendance. Caius was brought in chains, his once proud bearing reduced to sullen defiance. He'd spent 6 months in the dungeons, and it showed. His skin was pale, his body thinner, his eyes holding the wild look of someone whose grip on sanity was slipping. When he saw Aldrich on the throne, something flickered across his face. Not remorse, not even fear. Just hatred, pure and undiluted. You should be dead, Caius spat. You were feral, lost, I won. You won nothing, Aldrich said quietly. You murdered innocent people, burned your own kingdom, and tried to extinguish our bloodline. All for a throne you were never fit to hold. I would have been a better king than you, strong, uncompromising, not weak like father, not soft like you.
Strength without compassion isn't leadership, it's tyranny. Aldrich's voice was steady. You're charged with high treason, regicide conspiracy, murder of royal consorts, and attempted infanticide. The evidence is overwhelming. The council has reached a verdict. Do you have anything to say in your defense? Caius laughed, a broken, bitter sound. Defense? I'd do it all again. Every choice. Every death. Because at least I had the courage to act. You just stumbled through ruling, trying to please everyone, changing laws that had worked for centuries. You made us weak. I made us fair. There's a difference. Fairness is for the weak. The strong take what they want. Then you won't mind the sentence. Aldrich stood, his voice carrying across the hall. Caius Nightfang, you are found guilty on all charges. The punishment is exile, permanent and absolute. You will be taken beyond the northern border and released. Any pact that offers you shelter will be considered in rebellion. Any assistance given to you will be treated as treason. You are stripped of your name, your bloodline, and your right to return. You will die alone, as you deserve. Caius's face went white. You can't. That's a death sentence. The far north in summer is barely survivable. In winter, it's the same fate you gave to my mate and child, Aldrich said softly. The same fate you would have given to every person who stood against you. I'm simply returning what you dealt. I'm your brother. You stopped being my brother the moment you chose the throne over our bond. Aldrich's voice hardened. Take him away. The guards dragged Caius from the hall. His screams echoed long after the doors closed behind him. Kaela felt Aldrich's hand find hers under the table. His fingers trembled slightly. That was the right choice, she said quietly. It was the only choice. But it doesn't feel right. Justice rarely does. Not when it's personal. They sat in silence as the hall slowly emptied, each lost in their own thoughts. Finally, Aldrich spoke again. I need to visit the valley, where my family died, where Ilara. He trailed off. I haven't been back since. Haven't had the strength. Do you want company? Please. They left the next morning, just the two of them and Leora. It took 2 days to reach the valley where Aldrich's cabin had once stood. The ruins were still there, though nature had begun reclaiming them, vines growing through broken walls, wildflowers pushing up through ash. Aldrich knelt in what had been the main room, his hand tracing the charred portrait of Ilara. Tears streamed down his face unchecked. I'm sorry, he whispered. I couldn't save you, couldn't protect you. I failed. Kaela knelt beside him, Leora in her arms. You didn't fail. She got Leora out, got her far enough that I could find her. That was the plan, wasn't it? Get the baby to safety, no matter the cost. She was supposed to survive too. Maybe, but she made sure Leora did. And that's what you would have wanted, isn't it? If you had to choose between them? Aldrich's hands clenched into fists. I would have chosen both. Found a way. There wasn't a way. Not that time, but she made sure there would be a future, that your daughter would live to carry on your legacy. Kaela set Leora down gently. The toddler immediately toddled over to her father, wrapping her small arms around his neck. Papa sad? She asked. Papa's remembering someone very important, Aldrich said, gathering her close. Your other mama, the one who loved you before you were even born. Leora's face scrunched in concentration. Where is she? She's gone, little one. But she made sure you would be safe. She was very brave. Like Mama Kaela? Aldrich looked at Kaela over Leora's head, his eyes bright with tears. Yes, exactly like Mama Kaela. They spent the day there, cleaning the ruins, placing flowers, telling Leora stories about Ilara. It was painful and cathartic in equal measure, a closing of one chapter and the tentative opening of another. As they prepared to leave, Aldrich paused at the edge of the clearing. I want to rebuild this place, not as it was, but as something new. A sanctuary, maybe. Somewhere people can come when they need to escape the politics and pressure of Iron Peak. I think that's a good idea, Kaela said. Will you help me design it? I'm a hunter, not an architect. You're also the person who turned a half-collapsed cabin into a home while caring for an infant alone. I trust your judgment, Kaela smiled. Then, yes, I'll help. They built it that summer. Not just Aldrich and Kaela, but hundreds of volunteers from across the kingdom. Pact sent workers. Nobles sent materials. Common folk sent food and supplies.
What emerged was something beautiful, a series of cabins arranged around a central hall, nestled in the valley with the mountains standing guard above. They called it Hope's Rest, a place where the weary could find peace, where the lost could find direction, where anyone could escape for a while from the weight of their lives. The dedication ceremony happened on the first day of autumn. Representatives from every pack attended, filling the valley with color and sound and life. Aldrich gave a speech about resilience and rebirth. Thessa presented a memorial stone carved with Alara's name. And Kaela, in front of the entire gathered assembly, planted a tree, a sapling from the valley where she'd found Leora, transplanted here as a symbol of new beginnings. This is where the old story ended, Aldrich told the crowd, and where a new one begins. A story about choosing compassion over cruelty, about building up instead of tearing down, about remembering that strength comes in many forms. My mate understood that. So does the woman who saved my daughter. So I hope, will all of you. The applause was deafening. That night, after the crowds had dispersed and only a few remained, Kaela found herself sitting by the lake with Leora asleep in her lap. The toddler, now closer to 18 months but looking 4, was growing so fast it was almost frightening. Soon she'd be running full speed, shifting into her wolf form, asking questions that had no easy answers. "You're worried," Aldrich said, settling beside her. "Terrified," Kaela admitted. "Every day she gets bigger, stronger, more aware. What if I'm not enough? What if I can't protect her from what's coming? You've been protecting her since before she could speak. I think you'll manage." That was different. That was survival. This is raising a princess, teaching her to rule someday. I'm not qualified for that. "Neither was I," Aldrich said. "I was the spare heir, remember? Never supposed to be king, but I learned, and you'll learn too. We both will. What if the kingdom decides I'm not suitable, that she needs someone with proper bloodlines, proper training? Then the kingdom can complain to me and I'll ignore them." Aldrich's voice was firm. "You earned your place here, not through bloodlines or politics, but through action. Through choosing her when no one else would. That's worth more than any pedigree." Kaela looked down at Leora, at the small face peaceful in sleep. "She's going to ask about Alara someday. Really ask, not just accept simple answers. What do I tell her?" "The truth. That her birth mother loved her enough to die protecting her, and that her other mother loved her enough to live protecting her." Aldrich's hand found Kaela's shoulder. "Both are equally important. Both made her who she is." Tears slipped down Kaela's cheeks. "I miss the simplicity sometimes, when it was just me and her in that cabin, and survival was the only goal. I know, but look at what you've built here, what we've built together." He gestured at the valley, at Hope's Rest glowing with lamplight, at the people moving between cabins with laughter and warmth. "This is what your choice created. Not just her survival, but a chance for the whole kingdom to be better." "That's a lot of pressure." "You've handled worse." Kaela laughed despite herself. "True." They sat in companionable silence as the stars emerged above. Somewhere in the distance, wolves howled, not in aggression, but in greeting. Pack calling to pack across the mountains, connected now by the supply routes and communication networks that Aldrich had rebuilt. "I have something to ask you," Aldrich said eventually, "and you can absolutely say no." "That's an ominous start." "I want to formalize your position, not just as Leora's guardian, but as—" He paused, searching for words. "As co-regent. Someone with official authority to make decisions regarding her welfare, her education, her future. Someone who stands equal to me in her upbringing." Kaela's breath caught. "That's... Aldrich, I'm not royalty. I have no claim to that kind of power. You have the claim that matters most, her trust and my trust. The council will accept it because I'll make it clear there's no other option, and the kingdom will accept it because they've seen what you've done for her. What about when she's older? What if she resents having 2 parents instead of choosing her own path? Then we'll deal with that when it comes. But for now, she's a child. She needs stability, love, and people who will put her needs above politics. That's you and me. Everything else is just paperwork." Kaela looked down at Leora again. The toddler stirred in her sleep, her small hand reaching out to grip Kaela's finger with surprising strength. An anchor. A promise. Okay, Kaela said softly. Yes, I'll do it. Aldrich's relief was visible. Thank you. For everything. For saving her. For staying. For helping me build something better than what we lost. We built it together, Kaela corrected. All of us. You, me, Thessa, Sarah, everyone who chose hope over fear. Leora was just the catalyst. She's good at that already. Imagine what she'll be like when she's grown. Terrifying, magnificent, probably both. They laughed together, the sound carrying across the water. Winter came again, as it always did in the north. But this winter felt different. The supply caches were full. The hunting territories were shared fairly. The frontier packs had shelter and support. And in Iron Peak, a king who'd been lost to madness ruled with wisdom born from suffering. On Leora's second birthday, though she looked closer to 6, the entire court gathered for a celebration. The toddler ran wild through the halls, her golden eyes bright with joy, her laughter infectious. She'd started shifting now, brief flashes of a wolf pup that appeared and disappeared with a child's lack of control. Each transformation made Kaela's heart skip with pride and terror. She's magnificent, Thessa said, watching Leora chase a ball across the floor, and absolutely terrifying.
That's what I keep saying, Kaela agreed. She's going to be a force of nature when she's grown. The kingdom won't know what hit it, assuming we can keep her alive that long. You've kept her alive through worse than a comfortable palace. Thessa's expression grew serious. I heard there's been talk. Some of the nobles questioning your position, suggesting she needs a proper guardian. Kaela's jaw tightened. Let them talk. They're suggesting someone with royal blood.
Someone who can teach her proper court etiquette and political maneuvering. She's 2. She needs someone who'll teach her to hunt and survive and think for herself. Court etiquette can wait. I agree. I'm just warning you that the pressure is building. Aldrich can only shield you from so much before it becomes a political issue. Before Kaela could respond, Leora came running over, her small face flushed with excitement. Mama, Papa says I can go outside tomorrow. Really outside. Not just the terrace. Does he now? Kaela glanced at Aldrich across the room. He was surrounded by nobles, but he caught her eye and shrugged apologetically. He said we could go to the forest. Will you come? Please? Kaela felt the weight of Thessa's warning, felt the invisible eyes of the court watching and judging. Then she looked at Leora's hopeful face and made the only choice that mattered. Of course I'll come. We'll make a whole day of it. Leora squealed and ran off to tell someone else the exciting news. Thessa smiled. That's why you're the right person for this job. You don't think about politics first. You think about her. Is that a compliment or a criticism? Both, but mostly a compliment. The next day, Kaela and Leora ventured into the forest with a small guard detail that Kaela mostly ignored. They tracked deer, identified edible plants, and practiced moving quietly through underbrush. Leora absorbed everything like a sponge, her young mind hungry for knowledge. Why do we have to be quiet? She asked as they crept through a stand of pines. Because prey can hear us. If we're loud, we go hungry. But we have food at the palace. We don't need to hunt. Not everyone does, and someday you might need these skills. It's better to learn them when you don't need them than to need them when you haven't learned. Leora thought about this. You had to use these skills when you saved me. It was the first time she'd referenced that period directly. Kaela felt her throat tighten. Yes, I did. Was it scary? Terrifying, but you were worth it. Why? The question was simple, but the answer was complex. How did you explain to a 2-year-old that some choices transcend logic, that some lives matter more than your own fear? Because when I found you, Kaela said slowly, you needed someone. And I could be that someone. That was enough. But you didn't know me. No, but I do now. And I'm glad I made that choice because it gave me you. Leora processed this in silence. Then she reached up and took Kaela's hand. I'm glad too. You're the best mama. The words hit Kaela like a physical force. She knelt down, bringing herself to Leora's eye level. You know you had another mama, right? One who loved you very much?
Papa told me. She died keeping me safe. That's right. So you have two mamas.
One who gave you life, and one who kept you alive. Both of us love you more than anything. Is that okay? To have two? It's more than okay. It means you're twice as loved. Leora hugged her fiercely, her small arms surprisingly strong. I love you, Mama. I love you too, little light. Always. They stayed like that for a long moment, the forest quiet around them. Then Leora pulled back, her face serious. When I'm big, I'm going to protect people like you protected me.
That's a good goal. Papa says I'll be queen someday, but I want to be like you too. Is that allowed? Kaela smiled through her tears. I think the kingdom would be lucky to have a queen who knows how to hunt and fight and survive, who remembers that strength comes in many forms. Then that's what I'll be, a queen like Papa and a hunter like you. You can be anything you want, Leora. That's the point of everything we're building. Choice, freedom, the right to be more than one thing. They walked back to the palace as the sun set, Leora chattering about everything she'd learned. The guard detail followed at a respectful distance, and Kaela felt the shift in their attitudes. They weren't just protecting her anymore. They were respecting her. That evening, Aldrich called Kaela to his private study. When she entered, he was standing by the window, looking out over the kingdom he'd nearly lost. The nobles met today, he said without preamble. About you. Kaela's stomach sank. And I told them that your position is non-negotiable. You're Leora's guardian, co-regent in matters regarding her upbringing, and a permanent member of this family. Anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with me personally. How did they take it? About as well as expected. Baron Morven had a near apoplexy. Duchess Celine demanded to know what qualifications you possessed. I told them your qualifications were keeping the princess alive through conditions that would have killed anyone else. He turned to face her. I also told them that if they couldn't respect the woman who saved the royal bloodline, they had no business calling themselves loyal. You're going to make enemies. I've had enemies before. They didn't work out well. His smile was sharp. Besides, I have you now. You're worth 10 nobles who've never known hardship. Kaela crossed the room to stand beside him. Together they looked out over Iron Peak at the lights flickering in windows, at the smoke rising from 1,000 chimneys. We did good, didn't we? She said quietly. We did. And we'll keep doing good. For her. For the kingdom. For everyone who needs a second chance. That's a lot of responsibility. Good thing we're not carrying it alone. They stood in comfortable silence, two people who'd been broken by circumstance and rebuilt by purpose. Outside, the first stars appeared. Somewhere in the palace, Leora was probably fighting bedtime, her energy inexhaustible even after a full day in the forest. Do you ever think about that night? Kaela asked. When you were still feral, watching us from the trees? Every day. I think about how close I came to never finding my way back, how close she came to dying without ever knowing I existed. But you did find your way back, and she lived. Because of you. Aldrich's voice was soft but certain. You gave me a reason to fight the madness. Every time I saw you with her, saw how fiercely you protected her, it reminded me of what I was fighting for. You brought me home, Kaela. Both of you. We brought each other home, Kaela corrected. You taught me that choosing to protect someone isn't weakness. It's the bravest thing you can do. Your pack was wrong to exile you. I know, but if they hadn't, I never would have found her. Never would have come here, never would have... She gestured around the study, at the life she'd built. This. Fate has a strange sense of humor. Or maybe we make our own fate. One impossible choice at a time. Aldrich laughed. I like that better. A knock interrupted them. Sarah entered, looking apologetic. Sorry to interrupt, but the princess refuses to sleep until she says goodnight to both of you. I've tried everything. Of course she does, Kaela said with a smile. We'll be right there. They found Leora in her chambers, standing in her bed with her arms crossed. Despite the late hour, her golden eyes were bright and alert. You're supposed to be sleeping, Aldrich said sternly, though his smile betrayed him. I was waiting for you, Leora said. Both of you, together. Kaela and Aldrich exchanged glances. They'd been trying to maintain separate routines. Aldrich handled the official princess duties,
Kaela handled the everyday care, but Leora had other ideas. "All right," Kaela said, sitting on the edge of the bed. "We're here. Now, will you sleep? Tell me a story first. About the winter. About how you saved me."
You've heard that story 100 times, but I like it. It's about being brave. The Aldrich sat on the other side of the bed, and Leora immediately crawled between them. "How about we tell you a different story? About a kingdom that almost fell, but didn't. About people who chose hope when fear was easier. Is it a true story? The truest kind. It's still being written." They took turns narrating, Aldrich describing the palace before the coup, Kaela adding details about the wilderness survival, both of them weaving together a story that was part history, part legend, part promise for the future. By the time they finished, Leora was fast asleep between them, one hand clutching Kaela's finger, the other holding Aldrich's. "We should probably move," Aldrich whispered. "Probably," Kaela agreed. Neither of them moved. They sat there in the dimly lit room, watching their daughter sleep, marveling at the impossible path that had brought them to this moment. An exiled hunter, a broken king, a lost princess. 3 people who shouldn't have survived, let alone thrived. But they had, and they would continue to, because that's what survivors did. Years later, when scholars wrote the history of this period, they would call it the Reformation. They would document Aldrich's new laws, the redistribution of power, the building of a more just society. They would note the economic recovery, the reduced pack conflicts, the emergence of new traditions. But the stories the people told were different. They told stories about a king who came back from madness because he had something worth fighting for, about a woman who defied an entire pack to save a stranger's child, about a princess who grew up learning to hunt and rule, to fight and govern, to be both fierce and fair. They told stories about Hope's Rest, where anyone could find sanctuary, about the supply caches that meant no pack had to face winter alone, about the guard who'd searched for 3 years and never gave up, about the mindwalkers who pulled a king from the abyss, about the loyalists who'd waited in darkness for a light that finally came. They told stories about second chances, about choosing compassion over cruelty, about love that transcended blood and tradition. And in the quiet valley where Alara had made her final stand, where a baby had nearly frozen to death, where a feral king had kept watch over the daughter he couldn't remember but somehow knew was his. In that valley, a tree grew tall and strong, its roots deep in soil watered by grief and sacrifice. They called it the Guardian's Oak. And in the spring, when it bloomed, the flowers were the same gold as a princess's eyes. The winter that had nearly killed them all had passed. And in its place, something new had grown, something better, something worth all the impossible choices that had brought them here. Kaela stood on the terrace of Hope's Rest on Leora's 5th birthday, watching the valley fill with representatives from across the kingdom. The girl, no longer a toddler but a young child with her father's bearing and her mother's determination, stood beside Aldrich as he addressed the crowd. 5 years ago, Aldrich said, his voice carrying across the valley, I thought I'd lost everything, my mate, my child, my humanity. But a stranger chose to save what I couldn't protect. And that choice, that single act of defiance against cruelty, changed the course of our kingdom. He gestured to Kaela, and she felt hundreds of eyes turn her way. Guardian Kaela Thorne was exiled for choosing compassion over survival law. She was cast out into a winter storm with a baby in her arms, and nothing but her courage to keep them alive. She could have abandoned my daughter, should have, by the logic of the old ways. But she didn't. And because of that choice, hope survived. The future survived. We all survived. The crowd erupted in cheers. Kaela felt tears burning in her eyes. Today, Aldrich continued, we formalize what has always been true. Kaela Thorne is not just my daughter's guardian. She is family. Blood of my blood, pack of my pack, bonded to the royal line by deed, if not by birth. And the kingdom recognizes this truth. He held out his hand. Kaela walked forward, feeling Leora's small hand slip into hers. Together, they stood before the crowd, a family forged not by bloodlines, but by impossible choices and unwavering love. Let it be known, Aldrich proclaimed, that the Nightfang line has 2 mothers, one who gave life and one who gave everything to preserve it.
Both are honored, both are remembered, both are loved. The cheers shook the mountains themselves. That night, after the celebrations had ended and the valley grew quiet, Kaela found herself back at the Guardian's Oak. Its branches were full now, strong enough to hold the weight of memory and promise both. "Thank you," she whispered to the tree, to Alara, to whatever forces had brought her to that ravine 5 years ago, "for trusting me with her, for making the choice you did. I promise I'll keep making it every day. I promise she'll know how much you loved her. I promise she'll grow up to be worthy of everything you sacrificed." The wind rustled through the leaves, and in that sound, Kaela heard something that might have been acknowledgement, acceptance, forgiveness for the mother who'd raised the daughter when the one who'd birthed her couldn't. She turned to find Aldrich and Leora standing at the edge of the clearing. Leora ran forward, her wolf already beginning to show through, faster, stronger, more aware with each passing day. "Mama, look! I can shift my eyes now, just my eyes." Golden wolf eyes stared out from a human face, and Kaela laughed with delight. "That's amazing, little light. Papa says I'll be able to shift fully by next winter. Will you teach me to hunt?" "Every single thing I know." They walked back to Hope's Rest together, a family built from fragments and determination. Behind them, the Guardian's Oak stood sentinel, and somewhere in the night, the Northern Kingdom slept peacefully for the first time in years. The woman who'd been exiled for choosing mercy had become the kingdom's greatest symbol of hope. The king who'd been lost to madness had found his way home, and the princess who should have died in a frozen ravine was growing into someone who would change the world. All because one person, on one brutal winter night, had heard a baby crying in the darkness and decided that some lives were worth any sacrifice. That choice had saved more than a child. It had saved them all.